Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to another class on internal security. As you know, today is the 10th class and we have a couple of topics left in our syllabus. So today we shall start with border security and border management. It's an important topic, but it's a small topic. So we will cover this topic today and we will start with security forces and different security agencies of India. This will be the last topic. So we'll try to cover as much as possible today. And this Saturday, please remember, we will have your doubt session. We will have a special doubt session so all your doubts can be cleared from internal security. On the same day, we'll take a 2-hour class, maybe 1.5 hours to 2 hours for the last chapter. Whatever remains after today, to cover that, we'll have a 2-hour class on Saturday followed by your doubt session. So the timing would be 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. This would be the class. For whatever topics we are left with today, we'll wrap it up on Saturday from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Please make a note of this. Maybe we can take a lunch break and then from 2:30, we can meet for 3 hours for your doubt session to clear all the doubts and questions that you have. I hope you know what to do. You have to send all your doubts before to IAS Live. You have to send all your doubts with the subject name in the title. We'll pick only those questions which you have asked on mail. So we'll set aside these 3 hours from 2:30 to 5:30 this Saturday to answer all the doubts from internal security. Whereas before that, from 12 to 2, we'll have a final session to wrap up whatever topics remain after today's class. Is that clear? If you have any doubts, please let me know. Veninder says, please repeat again. This Saturday, we will have your doubt session along with a small extra class to cover whatever topics that remain today. Right? Today is the last class. We'll wrap up almost 95-98% of the syllabus. We'll be left with few topics for which we need maybe 1.5 to 2 hours maximum. So Saturday, we'll meet at 12 p.m. 12 to 2 p.m. we'll first finish the class, finish all the syllabus, take a small lunch break, and then come back at 2:30. And for 3 hours, we'll have your doubt session. The whole session will be for your doubts, but you need to ask those doubts before. Send your doubts on email, mention the subject name, and ensure that your questions are sent. Only those questions will be picked to be answered in the doubt session. All right. So let's begin with border security and border management. This is actually a very interesting chapter, but it's a very small topic. And best part is it's all connected to what we've already studied. It is connected to Northeast insurgency. It's connected to the challenges we have studied in Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir. It's also connected with organized crime and other challenges that we face from across the border. So we just have to bring everything together and cover these topics in a structured manner. So let's begin by understanding India's boundaries. What is the spatial extent? What is the spread of India's borders or boundaries? Why is border security important? What mechanisms do we have for border management in India? That is something we'll understand from a conceptual point of view. And then I will pick up each border separately. We'll take up each border, we'll understand what challenges are present and how India is trying to tackle those challenges. Is that clear? So this is what we'll be doing in this chapter. So I hope you know that India has a very long land border, and as well as we are blessed with a very long maritime border. Because any threats that come from the outside, particularly your external threats can be tackled more effectively if your borders are secure. Right? Even in our homes, if the outer boundary is secure, the perimeter of the house is secure, right? If the compound wall is secure, if you have enough, fences and cameras on the outer boundary of your house is much more secure from any outside intrusion. Similarly, for any country, borders, if they are secure, your land border and as well as your maritime border, if they are secure, you can deal with external threats in a much better manner. I'm not saying it will eliminate external threats, but at least it gives you the ability to counter the external threats in a much better manner. So be it terrorism, the cross-border infiltration, the cross-border smuggling and trafficking, right? All these threats can be handled better if your borders are secure. So India has a very, very big challenge because we have a long land border of around 15,106 kilometers. Now imagine that. Imagine 15,106 kilometers of land boundary. And that too, several sections of this boundary is still disputed. Is that clear? Then we have a coastline of 7,516 kilometers, including 2 island territories that are located a little far away from India, right? Andaman Nicobar and Lakshadweep Islands. They are away from the mainland, and these island territories have a strategic location in the Indian Ocean. So, though they give us a strategic advantage, securing the island territories becomes a challenge in itself as they are located far away. So these are the boundaries of India, right? This is the land border, the extent of India's land border and maritime border. Now, if you just look at the land border, you can break it up like this in this table. I have given the split up. You can see the split up here with the longest land border being with Bangladesh. Kindly remember this data as well. Remember the order of the countries and the rough boundary length that we share with each neighboring country. This can come as a prelims question. It can be a map-based question for your prelims. UPSC is known to ask such questions. All right. So Bangladesh shares the longest land boundary of India, 4,096 odd kilometers. Then comes China with around 3,488 kilometers, followed by Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bhutan, and yes, with Afghanistan as well. This is the extent of our land boundary. Now, please look at the map. You'll get a fair idea as to what is the territorial extent. So here we share a long boundary with Pakistan, a very complex boundary as well. Then we share a small border over here with Afghanistan, a very small border of around 96 to 106 kilometers. See, this border does not exist in reality. On the ground, this boundary does not exist between India and Afghanistan. But since we claim the whole state of Jammu and Kashmir as it existed in 1947, and as Pakistan has illegally occupied these territories, it's important to show that India still has this boundary with Afghanistan, or else it will weaken our claims on J&K. So that's why in all our official claims, in our official maps, we always show the whole state of J&K, including the small boundary with Afghanistan, which would connect us with the strategic Wakhan corridor. If we had this boundary with Afghanistan, if Pakistan hadn't occupied these parts of Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, then India would have had a direct link to Wakhan corridor of Afghanistan. Because from the Wakhan corridor, which is a narrow land corridor, we could have connected even with Central Asian countries. But that is not possible because Pakistan has illegally occupied these territories, thus permanently blocking this access. But for official purposes, we still claim this boundary. So we will say that India has this border with Afghanistan. Then you have another disputed boundary that's with China. Right, a very long boundary with China as well. Then this border here with Nepal. Another important Himalayan border with Bhutan. But the most important one being the one with Bangladesh, as this is the longest land boundary of India. Then finally, you have another important boundary here with Myanmar. Right? So these are the land borders of India. So look at the rough length. Remember, you don't have to by heart it. Just remember the approximate length. Is that clear? And remember the order of the countries. That will be easier. The order I've given in the table. Now you can see the coastline as well. The coastline is very clearly projected over here. From Gujarat to Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, and West Bengal. Right? So this is a very, very long coastline. We are blessed with a coastline of 7,500 square kilometers, which covers the island territories also. Andaman Nicobar over here and Lakshadweep over here. So this is essentially the territorial extent of India. So across these boundaries, there are many challenges that are present that create problems in border security. There are several challenges that we face along these borders. We have geographical challenges. The terrain that is present here, the topography itself could create many challenges. The neighboring countries, and especially if they are hostile and if they are giving any kind of support, if there is any support from coming from across the border for organized crime and terrorist activities, this becomes a bigger challenge to secure the boundary. And if the border is disputed, if there are any existing disputes. So these are the primary challenges that we can think of. The challenge related to the geography itself, the complex terrain and the topography of the border. Then the presence of the neighbors, and if they are hostile to us, if they are giving some kind of support from across the border for criminal and terror activities, that becomes a challenge. And finally, if the boundaries are disputed. So these are the primary challenges that we can think of, which creates hurdles for efficient border security and border management. All right. So UPSC might ask you a very basic question, a 10-mark question, asking you to highlight the importance of border security, why border security is important, or what are the general challenges we face along our boundaries. What is the territorial extent of India, and what kind of challenges are present along the borders of India? So such basic, straightforward questions can come, and this basic knowledge is important to write answers to such a question. Right? You can draw the map of India, the rough map, and you can even show these boundaries as well and discuss these challenges one by one. So let's focus on the primary objective of border management. The term border management is a broader term. It includes not just border security, it also includes border development. Understood? The term border management is a broader term. It covers both border security, that is to secure your borders with security forces and with hard border controls. You deploy your security forces and use border controls to control the boundary and secure the boundary. Correct? You can fence the border. You can create very strict visa immigration policies. You can take up other aggressive measures as well by deploying armed security forces. So all these are border security measures. Other than that, we will have to look at border infrastructure. We will have to focus on the development of the border villages, which is also equally important. We have to look after the overall administration, governance of these border areas, the border territories of India, right? So this collectively is called border management. Border security and border development together becomes your border management. So the primary objective of border management is to secure our borders against any hostile threats. The hostile threat might be from a terrorist organization. It could be from an organized criminal cartel, which is involved in smuggling and trafficking. It could be from a hostile state through its intelligence and intelligence agencies and armed forces. Essentially, the state actors of a hostile neighbor could be creating these challenges for us. So this is where the priority lies in border security, to secure the boundaries of India, both land and maritime boundaries, against any such hostile threats that threatens our security. Your internal security situation can get aggravated because of these external factors. Your local insurgencies, right? Your domestic situation could get affected because of the external threats coming from the outside, like drug smuggling from outside of India, where drugs are being smuggled, pumped into India, or fake Indian currency notes, which are being pushed into India from across the borders, right? That could destabilize your economy. The smuggling of arms and weapons from across the border that could drive insurgency and terrorism. So, your internal security and the domestic public law and order situation, public order situation is dependent on your boundaries and how you manage your boundaries and how you counter these external threats. So, securing the border against these hostile threats is the primary focus to deal with terrorism, organized crime, and any kind of hostile state support and activities. Next, in border management, you put in place certain systems to counter these hostile threats. That is another focus in border management. As I told you, you establish dedicated security forces which become your border guarding forces, because this is a specialization. You need specialist forces for this. So you have to raise dedicated forces to guard these boundaries. You also need special resources as well, right? From technology to weapons, maybe fencing the border, installing floodlights along the border, and using various technological methods to check infiltration, to check any illegal cross border movement, and also to curb or rather to improve your surveillance in border areas, right? So this becomes the focus of border management. You take these appropriate measures by deploying the right technology, by employing the right tools, by procuring the right arms and weapons, right? You employ these strategies to secure these boundaries, to counter these hostile threats, along with raising dedicated border guarding forces. And finally, another prime objective of border management is to facilitate the legitimate legal cross border movement. You need to ensure that these measures do not affect the legitimate cross border movement which is needed for improving trade and people to people relations. Right? You need to facilitate your border trade. Cross border trade becomes very, very important. It will boost the local economy of the border villages. It will create livelihood opportunities for people in the border areas. It will also help in improving people to people relations. It will promote cultural ties with our neighboring countries. It will help the communities in the border areas to maintain their cultural familial ties with people on the other side of the border. You need to facilitate the movement of goods and maybe vehicles as well. So this also becomes a part of border management. Facilitating the legitimate cross-boundary trade, commerce, and interaction between people also becomes a focus of border management. Understood? So these are the priorities as far as border management is concerned, as far as border security and development is concerned. So this is a very challenging part of governance. Border security, border management is not easy, right? These are remote areas. As I told you, the geography might be very difficult and complicated, right? The terrain topography could be very challenging. You'll have rivers, wetlands, you'll have mountains and dense forested areas. You might have deserts. So it's not easy to, deploy security forces or man these boundaries and improve patrolling and surveillance. The climate, the weather conditions here could also create a very big challenge. right? So geography itself becomes a major threat. It becomes a very big challenge that needs to be overcome. Next is about connectivity. Without having good connectivity to the border areas, how will you deploy troops? How will you secure these areas? How will you carry out patrolling, right? And how will you provide development to the border villages without good roads, railway links, etc.? Right? You need to provide basic services as well, like electricity, water, create jobs and livelihoods. So all these requires a lot of effort, and it requires a lot of coordination between different arms of the government, different organs of the government of India, along with state and district authorities, have to coordinate and work together to achieve this objective. All right. So, which is the nodal ministry for border management in India? Which is the nodal ministry in India? Some are saying Defense Ministry, External Affairs Ministry, but most are saying Home Ministry. Very good. See, border management is an internal security issue. It deals with the internal security of the country. You're upholding your internal security by countering your external threats through border management. So it's an internal security issue. So obviously, it's the MHA, the Ministry of Home Affairs. MHA is your nodal ministry. Please remember this. Is that clear? So MHA will have to look after border management of the country, including border security and border development. And to achieve these objectives, it will have to coordinate with various other stakeholders. It will have to work closely with Ministry of External Affairs, as it involves an element of foreign relations with our neighbors. It will have to work closely with all the security agencies of India, including the Ministry of Defense and the armed forces as well. Right? So that coordination is necessary between different ministries and organs of the government. It will have to coordinate with intelligence agencies like IB and RAW, and with several other legal, regulatory, and economic agencies of the country, along with state governments, the concerned border states, and as well as with the border districts. So this coordination has to be achieved. There should be vertical coordination within the central government between different ministries and organs of the center, including armed forces, security forces, and intelligence agencies. There should be horizontal coordination as well, from center to states to districts, right? So this is the task of the MHA. This complex challenge has to be handled by the Ministry of Home Affairs. So to look after border management, there is a dedicated department which has been constituted under MHA called the Department of Border Management. If you guys have visited MHA's website, as I had asked you to do, you would have noticed that there is a separate department that deals exclusively with border management in the country. So under the department, there are two dedicated divisions. You have Border Management Division 1, Border Management Division 2, which look after separate tasks that deal with border management. So it's this department that looks after all the aspects, from border security, deploying the border guarding forces, deploying the right technology and infrastructure, including development of these border areas. All these aspects of border management is handled by the Department of Border Management. So there are two separate divisions, Division 1 and Division 2. And your Division 1 looks after management of international borders of India, which includes handling the border guarding forces, looking after their deployment, taking care of patrolling, border surveillance, all the security aspects of it, along with the border security measures that need to be taken. Is that clear? These tasks related to our international borders is handled entirely by Division 1. So it looks after the deployment of the forces, the patrolling, surveillance that is needed, and the specific security measures that are needed, like what kind of technology can be used, what resources have to be deployed to improve our border security. All these aspects of border security along the international borders is that clear? Then comes Division 2, which deals with the administrative part, the development part, and the coordination part of it. So all matters related to administration, the administrative issues related to border management, all aspects of coordination with concerned stakeholders, from foreign ministry to defense ministry to armed forces, state governments, district authorities, the whole coordination mechanism, along with few development programs. Is that clear? Development programs, implementing few development welfare programs, and even looking after checkposts, the checkposts to regulate border trade and cross-border movement. All these aspects are handled by Division 2. So security related aspects are handled by Division 1, whereas Division 2 looks after all the other aspects, the administrative coordination, development programs, management of checkposts, managing the land ports of India through the Land Ports Authority. Just like you have airports managed by Airports Authority of India, right? We have seaports in the country. These are the ports of entry, the points of entry into the country. So similarly, your land ports, they play a critical role. They are the ports of entry or the points of entry located on your land boundaries. So this is where border trade, cross-border movement is legally allowed, legitimately allowed. So managing these checkpost facilities, handling these land port points is also a primary task of Division 2. So this is how the roles are divided, the tasks are organized within the Home Ministry. All right. So this basic knowledge is very important before we look at the next part of the discussion. So now that you know what are the challenges and priorities and what's the structure we have, let's focus on each individual border and understand how we are securing and managing these borders. Now we are moving to the next part of the discussion. So to secure these borders that we have a dedicated policy called One Border, One Force policy. The One Border, One Force policy of India, which was adopted after the Kargil War. See, Kargil conflict was a disaster for India. Even though we won the conflict, pushed out the Pakistani intruders, it was a disaster because it was a colossal intelligence failure, a massive security failure on part of the Indian armed forces and intelligence agencies, and as well as the Indian government. So as a result, to fix the issues in our security apparatus, the then Vajpayee government constituted few important committees to thoroughly review our security architecture, both external and internal, including border security. Important committees were set up, such as the Kargil Review Committee, the KRC. Kargil Review Committee was established to conduct a thorough review of our national security and internal security, to identify any gaps and weaknesses in our security architecture and suggest reforms to our intelligence agencies, our security forces, and armed forces. This important committee was headed by Dr. K. Subramaniam. He was one of India's leading strategic thinkers. He was an IAS officer who had enough experience in handling strategic issues. And he was none other than the father of your current foreign minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. So Jaishankar's father was Dr. K. Subramaniam. So under his chairmanship, the Kargil Review Committee was constituted by the Vajpayee government to thoroughly review India's security architecture and suggest reforms. So this committee, the Subramaniam Committee or the Kargil Review Committee, suggested several important reforms, and many of them have been implemented. Over the last 20 odd years, most of the reforms suggested by the committee have been implemented. Another important commission or a kind of committee or a group that was set up was the Group of Ministers, or GOM. a group of ministers was also set up by Prime Minister Vajpayee to look after the security gaps, to address the failures that had happened that led to the Kargil conflict. This GOM was headed by then Deputy PM Lal Krishn Advani. Under LK Advani's chairmanship, a group of ministers had been constituted to thoroughly review India's security preparedness, to identify the flaws and weaknesses in our security architecture which had led to the Kargil intrusion. So these are very important commissions or groups, and they have given important recommendations. They have approved several important reforms. The government has implemented several reforms as well. Another important commission that has dealt with India's security has to be the Naresh Chandra Task Force, set up by the Manmohan Singh government. Naresh Chandra was the Cabinet Secretary of India, the highest ranking bureaucrat in the country. Under his chairmanship, the Manmohan Singh government also set up a committee later. This was after the Mumbai attacks, after 26/11 attacks, to suggest reforms to our security architecture. So these are three important committees or groups that have dealt with India's national and internal security. All right, the Kargil Review Committee, headed by Dr. K. Subramaniam, the group of ministers headed by LK Advani. These two were constituted immediately after the Kargil war. Then, after the Mumbai attacks, the Naresh Chandra Task Force, set up by the Manmohan Singh government. These committees and groups have given important recommendations, and many of these reforms have been implemented as well. The group of ministers could approve some of the reforms, and it has implemented many of these reforms. So we are still in the process of implementing them. Even recently as 2018, 2020, we have still been implementing some of these reforms that were recommended by these commissions. All right. So one important change that was recommended was one border, one force policy. It was a key recommendation of the KRC. One of the big recommendations of Kargil Review Committee was one border, one force policy. Because before the Kargil war, our border management was very haphazard. It was not structured. It was leading to a lot of confusion and chaos, because the same border would be secured by different forces. The border with Pakistan, border with Nepal would be guarded by multiple forces, leading to lack of coordination and confusion, which was compromising our border security and border management. So that is why Kargil Review Committee gave this very, very important recommendation called one border, one force. Meaning, one border will be secured only by one force. There won't be multiple forces securing a particular border. So this recommendation was accepted by the group of ministers as well, and it was implemented by the Vajpayee government. So this is the structure we are following even today. We have one border being secured by one force, like the border with Pakistan, guarded entirely by BSF, from Gujarat all the way till Jammu and Kashmir. The whole stretch of the border is secured just by BSF. Similarly, the entire stretch of the border with Bangladesh secured by one force, again BSF. There's no other security force deployed. It's only BSF across the entire stretch of the India-Bangladesh border. Then you have SSB, the Sashastra Seema Bal, for the borders with Nepal and Bhutan. ITBP for the borders with China. Assam Rifles for the borders with Myanmar. And for the maritime theater, the Coast Guard along with the Indian Navy. This is the border management architecture, the border security architecture that has been created in India. This is one border, one force policy of India. Is that clear? This has streamlined border security. It allows BSF, SSB, ITBP, Assam Rifles to give dedicated focus and attention to one particular border and manage all the aspects related to border security. Right? So this has made India more efficient in securing the borders, and that is why today India is much safer and secure compared to before. Understood? Now let's study each border separately. Let's go through these borders one by one. I'll take you through all these land boundaries, and then we'll come to the maritime coastal boundaries. Let's start with one of the most complex borders for India, that is with Pakistan. This border with Pakistan that we share has several challenges that are present over here. So first, identify the states, the border states and union territories that we have. You can expect a prelims question here. So the Indian states or union territories that share the boundary include Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab, and the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Previously, it was the state, now it's the union territory. If you want, you can go back and look at the map. Just look at the map here, right? So Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab, and the union territory of J&K. These are the border states and union territories of India, sharing this sensitive border with Pakistan. Now, there are many threats that we face from across this border, right? We have studied this as well under Khalistan movement, under J&K terrorism. Now we just have to sum it up. We just have to discuss that in a structured manner. Now, if you look at this border, the India-Pakistan border, there are two types of boundaries that exist between India and Pakistan. There are two types of borders that we have. We have a IB or an international border, and we have a LOC, the line of control. Got it? The IB is a settled border. International border is a settled border between India and Pakistan that stretches from Gujarat all the way till Punjab, touching almost Jammu. Whereas LOC is a temporary de facto border. It's a temporary de facto border that you find in Jammu and Kashmir, which is disputed. Right? So as the Kashmir dispute continues, it remains a temporary de facto border. Is that clear? So these are the two types of borders that we have. Again, if you want more clarity, let me take you back to the map. See, from Gujarat to Rajasthan to Punjab, almost touching Jammu over here. This entire stretch of the border, this is your IB, international border, which is a settled permanent border. We have no differences over this border. Then you have the LOC, roughly over here, the line of control in J&K. So it's a temporary border, a de facto border that we have as the Kashmir dispute continues between India and Pakistan. All right. Now, at the tip of the IB, where IB ends at the Arabian Sea, we have a minor dispute here as well between Gujarat and Sindh in the Kutch region, Run of Kutch region, which is the Sir Creek dispute. All right. And where LOC ends at point NJ9842. This is the last point of LOC, point NJ9842. This is where we have another dispute to the north of it called the Siachen dispute at the Siachen Glacier. Is that clear? So this is the nature of India-Pakistan boundary. There are two types of borders we have, an IB, a settled permanent border, and a temporary de facto border, the LOC. So apart from the Kashmir dispute, we have these two minor disputes, Sir Creek dispute and as well as the Siachen dispute. Now, what kind of threats do we face over here? What are the major challenges that we deal with? See, one of the biggest challenges we face is cross-border infiltration. The constant cross-border infiltration of terrorists. Correct? And as we studied, this is not happening on its own. There is direct Pakistani support. The Pakistani army and its intelligence agency, the ISI, are giving direct state support for this cross-border infiltration to occur. All right. Plus, we have rampant organized crime that is prevalent along this border, which is again enabled by the Pakistani state agencies. So, along the 700 kilometers of the boundary and across the entire IB, we face these threats. Along the LOC in Kashmir, along the IB from Punjab to Gujarat, right? And even in the Kutch area, in the Sar Creek region, which is disputed. In all these sectors, we face the threat of cross-border infiltration of terrorists and as well as smugglers and criminals. So for all these illicit activities, there is direct support that exists from across the border, right? The Pakistani army and the ISI, they have created terror launch pads. These terror launch pads are temporary facilities. These are temporary camps present along the line of control. All right, these are temporary camps present along the line of control. From this is where terrorists are launched into India. Basically, they are pushed into India. And for this infiltration, Pakistan is giving direct support and backing. As we were discussing under J&K, I explained how Pakistani army and the border guarding force, they deliberately break the ceasefire and open fire against Indian positions, especially during night time. They try to distract the Indian troops so that the terrorists can sneak through. They can make use of the cover being given by their fire, which they have opened against Indian positions, right? And they can sneak into India and cross over and then carry out attacks in India. Across this border, there are several underground tunnels which have been dug. Just like Hamas uses a network of underground tunnels to operate in Gaza Strip and to infiltrate into Israel. Similarly, Pakistani terror groups and criminal networks, they have dug several underground tunnels, not just in Kashmir, not just along LOC, but also across the IB, from Punjab to Rajasthan to Gujarat. So underground tunnels also enable infiltration of terrorists and smugglers and traffickers. So there is a easy flow of drugs, weapons, even funds, along with the movement of terrorists and your organized criminals, the smugglers and traffickers. They are being easily pushed across the border into India with direct Pakistani state support. There is hostile support coming from our hostile neighbor. Right? So this makes the border very, very challenging to secure and protect. Understood? We understood the links between Khalistan movement and how Afghan drugs were being pumped from across the border. Right? We studied how J&K separatist groups have been given direct support from Pakistan. So this kind of support exists across the border, and an entire terror ecosystem has been created in POK, in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. There is a terror ecosystem available here in POK, along with similar facilities in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. So all the threats present here spills over into India from across the border, and Pakistan is directly giving a push to this. Understood? So how do we secure this boundary? What measures do we take? See, the geography as well creates a challenge for India. We do have a very difficult terrain and very challenging climatic conditions. This is something you need to acknowledge as well. Apart from the challenges created by the terrorists, the organized criminal networks and Pakistani state agencies, nature itself creates more challenges for India. You have marshy areas in Gujarat towards the run of Kutch. Between Gujarat and Sindh of Pakistan, there is a marshy area which is always flooded with water. It's a wetland ecosystem. It's very difficult to guard and secure a marshy area. How will you patrol? How will you move around in such a marshy wetland? Then once you come towards the other part of Gujarat and Rajasthan, right? You come across arid desert conditions from Gujarat to Rajasthan. This creates a challenge of its own. Then you come towards Punjab, you have urban and rural areas with heavy population, with densely populated areas right next to the border. Correct? If you've ever been to the border areas in Punjab, you would have noticed that there are cities, towns right on the border. There are villages present right along the border. It's not some remote, faraway area. So these are populated areas, so naturally securing such boundaries become difficult and challenging. Then once you move towards J&K, the terrain changes completely. You have to deal with the mighty Himalayan mountains, right? Along with the steep slopes, the forests, the rivers, and the snowfall, and the cold, frigid conditions that comes with J&K. Now, looking at the geography, the climatic conditions, you can easily say that this is a very, very difficult, challenging border to secure. Right? We have a standing active dispute with Pakistan over Kashmir. We have the Sir Creek dispute and Siachen dispute as well, which adds to the challenge and problems. So what India has done is that as part of border management, we have dedicated the BSF as the primary border guarding force under one border, one force policy. We have taken several proactive measures to secure this border, including fencing of this entire border and floodlighting the whole border. You might have seen few satellite images of India-Pakistan border. You can see the exact line, especially the picture is taken during night. You can see the entire line of India-Pakistan border because it is floodlit. We have installed lights along with fencing the border. This provides physical security, right? It helps in better surveillance, better patrolling, and checking all the threats and countering infiltration. Along with these basic physical measures, the BSF has deployed some of the latest advanced technologies for improved surveillance along this boundary. From CCTV cameras to thermal scanners and motion detectors. Even laser-based sensors and satellites, and as well as drones for enhanced observation and surveillance. All such high-end technologies have been deployed to secure this critical border of India. Right? Most of the fenced border is installed with CCTV cameras to provide round-the-clock surveillance. There are thermal scanners and motion detectors and laser sensors as well to detect any movement. We also use underground scanners. There is a radar technology available through which you can detect any presence of underground tunnels which the terrorists or infiltrators are using. We also make use of Earth observation satellites and drones for constant surveillance along the sensitive border area. Now, the latest emerging threat that we are facing from across the border is that drones are being actively used by Pakistan, by the terror groups and by the criminals as well. And they are easily sending money, drugs, and weapons across the border into India. Especially the small micro drones, the nano drones. They are available off the shelf, right? They are used mainly for recreational purposes as a toy, or even for other professional photography, etc. Such basic commercially available drones can be rigged to carry such contraband material. Contraband is basically illegal material across the border into India. So this is basically facilitating illicit trafficking into India. And this has become a major challenge for us. The usage of drones by Pakistan's ISI, the terror groups and the criminal cartels, has become a very big challenge in Punjab, in Rajasthan as well. We have seen attempts being made, and in Jammu and Kashmir, where multiple drones cross over frequently and they drop these consignments of money, drugs, and weapons into India. Drones are also being used for carrying out terror attacks. I'm not talking about advanced military drones. I'm talking about basic drones that are available commercially, right? Commercially available drones can be rigged to carry explosives and carry out a suicide mission, a kamikaze attack to strike at targets. We have seen one such attack at an Indian Air Force base in Jammu and Kashmir just a couple of years ago. From across the LOC, armed drone crossed over, right? Couple of drones crossed over and they struck an Indian Air Force base in J&K, causing a terror attack. We have seen many examples around the world. Look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict. You see how basic drones, commercially available drones, are being rigged with explosives to carry out these coordinated strikes, right? And drones can operate together like a swarm. Drones can be programmed to operate like a swarm to overwhelm your air defense. So we are dealing with this very real threat where simple basic drones can be used, hundreds of them can be used simultaneously to mount a coordinated swarm strike, which could overwhelm our defenses. So tackling drones has become a challenge for the BSF, and it is gearing up and procuring advanced technology to counter drones as well. All right. So BSF is using several anti-drone systems and anti-drone technology. From shooting them down to intercepting their satellite link, right? There will be a GPS link to navigate the drones. If you intercept and manipulate this function, the drones can be disabled. Or you can disable the radio connection, the radio control, which the controllers are using to operate the drones remotely, right? So electronic interception is being employed to disrupt the navigation, the GPS satellite navigation, and also to interfere with the radio remote control, along with shooting down the drones and other technologies that are available in the market. There are techniques available through which drones can be caught or drones can be physically destroyed. There are both kinetic options and passive options. Kinetic means you're using force to strike the drone, destroy the drone entirely. All right. Passive technologies are where you just capture it or you just bring it down. So both kinetic and passive options are being employed by the BSF to destroy the drones and also to capture them in order to deal with the threat. Is that clear? In fact, there are several Indian tech startups and defense startups that are working on the technology as well. You might have seen during the recent G20 summit, anti-drone technologies were deployed all across Delhi to secure Delhi's airspace from any drone attacks. These are indigenous technologies today. They can scan the airspace, look out for these small micro drones, and not only track their movement, but even interfere with their GPS navigation and their radio communication. That itself will passively disable the drone and bring it down. Or if that fails, you can always use the kinetic option, the kill option, where you destroy the drone physically and bring it down. So these methods are also being actively deployed along the border. It's a priority right now for India, given that drones have become a major threat from Pakistan, right? From smuggling drugs and weapons to bringing funds to terrorists. Drones are performing all these tasks. And today trafficking has become so simple. You don't have to rely on an organized criminal cartel. You don't have to rely on human traffickers anymore. Using basic drones, you can easily smuggle all this illicit material, causing these security challenges for us. So these are the broad measures that we have taken to secure and safeguard this important border with Pakistan. Is that clear? Now let's talk about the next important border, that's with Bangladesh. The border with Bangladesh. This is the longest land boundary, as we understood. It is shared with states such as West Bengal, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. These are the states, the border states, sharing this long land border with Bangladesh. And if you look at the terrain, the geography, again, it's very, very challenging. It's a very complex terrain that we share with Bangladesh. There are few plain areas, for example, towards Bangladesh and Tripura as well. There are riverine belts. We share 54 transboundary rivers. Now imagine the riverine network that will be present along the boundary. From Ganga, the Teesta, Brahmaputra, Barak and Feni, right? We have multiple rivers cutting across India-Bangladesh border, a total of 54 transboundary rivers. You have hilly mountainous areas and densely forested jungles as well. Towards Assam, Meghalaya, then Tripura and Mizoram, right? You have mountainous territory and dense forests and jungles, which create these natural gaps in the border. There are natural gaps in the border which are very difficult to secure. It's very hard to fence them or guard them or even to patrol those areas. And as a result, the border becomes highly porous in nature. What do you mean by porous border? It means there are many gaps in the border. The terrain itself, the topography is so complex that it creates these natural gaps, which is very tough to secure. And as a result, it's a very porous border. There are many areas which are densely populated. For example, in West Bengal, there are border villages present right along the India-Bangladesh boundary line. So these are densely populated villages where cultivation is also taken up, and there are farm fields located right next to the boundary line. You have the boundary line, and right next to that, farmers are cultivating, and border villages are present. So this creates a challenge in itself, right? Towards the northeast, the territory is so complex, filled with mountains, forests, etc. Right? It becomes very, very difficult to secure and guard this boundary. So from across this border, we have faced many, many threats, as we have studied in previous chapters. Right? In Northeast insurgency, we thoroughly understood the threats we have faced from Bangladesh. From illegal migration, which directly contributed to insurgency in Assam and Tripura, to rampant organized crime, where you find easy smuggling of drugs and weapons. There is human trafficking and wildlife trafficking as well. And this is a preferred route for pumping fake currency notes into India. Pakistan's ISI prints FICNs, fake Indian currency notes, to destabilize the Indian economy and to finance terrorism. These fake currency notes are smuggled into India. One route is through the Bangladeshi route. So this is an economic threat. It leads to economic destabilization of the country and also aids terror financing. If you've seen the web series Farzi, right? It fairly depicts the threats that we face along the borders, how the fake currency notes are smuggled into India from Nepal, from Myanmar, from Bangladesh, and also from the maritime boundaries, right? So these are major threats that we face here, along with cattle smuggling. Cattle are smuggled across, which becomes a sensitive communal issue. But the biggest threat we have faced here is the infiltration of insurgents and terrorists. The cross-border movement and infiltration of various terror and insurgent groups, which had found a safe haven in Bangladesh. Hostile Bangladeshi governments, which were pro-Pakistan, they had sheltered these terrorist and insurgent groups, giving terror sanctuary to these outfits, right? So all these major threats have been faced by India from across this border, be it insurgents like ULFA, NSCN, NDFB, the Mizo National Front at one point when this was still East Pakistan. then other groups like Huji, Lashkar-e-Toiba, all these outfits, they have misused this boundary to easily cross over and carry out terrorism against India. So this is again one of the most challenging borders. It's critical for the security and stability of the nation, especially in the northeast region. To tackle northeast insurgency, securing this boundary is absolutely crucial. So this is the reason why India is ever grateful to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, one of India's very, very good friends, and her party, Awami League, because as soon as she came to power in 2009, since then she has consistently helped India in tackling all these security threats. Your foreign relations also matter. See, from Pakistan, the threats are more because Pakistan is constantly hostile to us. Whereas Bangladesh, since we have a friendly government under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, right? Single-handedly, her government played a big role in destroying the terror base, the sanctuaries that existed for these terror groups across the border. All these insurgent terror groups, they were decimated, right? Their access to funds and drugs and weapons were cut off, and their camps were destroyed as well. And all the top terrorists were handed over to India. Without that Bangladeshi support in the last 13, 14 years, we couldn't have stabilized Northeast India. We couldn't have tackled Northeast insurgency. So foreign relations with the neighboring country also plays a role in border security. So after the assistance from Bangladesh, we have further secured this border by trying to fence the border as much as possible. And wherever possible, we have tried floodlighting the border as well. But the whole border can't be fenced and floodlit. Unlike the Pakistan border, right? Border with Pakistan is almost entirely fenced, right until LOC. The whole IB is entirely fenced and floodlit. But here it's not so easy because of the complex geography and terrain. Only a part of it, in some parts, like in Bangladesh, some parts of Assam, Meghalaya, fencing has been done and floodlights also have been installed. Along with that, all the high-tech surveillance equipment that I was mentioning earlier, CCTV cameras, satellites, drones, right? Thermal and laser-based sensors and motion detectors, which can help in checking infiltration. All these tools are being deployed with enhanced patrolling by the BSF. The Border Security Force, again, is responsible for this critical boundary. So this is our one border, one force policy. One entire border is being looked after by one single force. Next, we have another important boundary. That's with Nepal, the India-Nepal boundary. This is another interesting border of India because India and Nepal have been very close friends. We share historical, cultural ties. So to maintain the friendly relations and the cultural and close economic relations, we have decided to keep this as an open border. This is the only open border of India established under the 1950 Treaty of Peace and Friendship. It's an open border, meaning there are no hard border controls. You can't fence the border. You can't deploy aggressive security forces and open fire, right? You can't disrupt the freedom of movement. So the states that share this boundary include Uttarakhand, UP, Bihar, West Bengal, and Sikkim. So here as well, the terrain, the geography is very complex, creating many natural gaps, which makes the border highly porous. Along with it being an open border with no border controls and relaxed immigration policy, the terrain is also challenging, creating even more problems for border security. Is that clear? So basically, you have free movement along this border. There is free movement of goods, free movement of people, and free movement of vehicles. So how do you secure such a border where there are no border controls and the terrain, the geography is complicated? From riverine networks to wetlands to dense forests and mountains. right? All sorts of terrain is present here. You look at the Uttarakhand-Nepal border. Here you find the Himalayan mountains, right? It's a mountainous territory. Plus, we have a standing dispute as well, the Kalapani dispute. The Kalapani dispute is along this boundary between Uttarakhand and Nepal, right? It's a hilly, mountainous terrain along with the Himalayan challenges, the climate, the snowfall. They create unique challenges. Towards UP and Bihar, you have the plains, the Terai belt. The Terai belt. So here we have cross-cultural connection between Madhes community, the Madhesis form a direct link between the families on both sides of the border. Along the plains, you have forests and wetlands and rivers, creating a unique challenge for India. Correct? If you look at the borders with UP and Nepal, there are dense forests present. There are many wetlands and rivers present here, right? The Ganga river system, the Ganga and its tributaries which flow down, they cause several wetlands as well, along with the riverine network, which becomes challenging to guard and manage. Towards West Bengal and Sikkim, you have the strategic Siliguri corridor of India, which is sandwiched between Nepal and Bangladesh, which is a weakness, a choke point for India. Then you have, again, the Himalayan terrain towards Sikkim, mountainous Himalayan terrain towards Sikkim. So all these create very difficult and unique challenges to safeguard this boundary. So as it is a highly porous border, there are many security threats, especially organized crime is very prevalent. We have seen that the border has been misused by drug traffickers and arms traffickers. Even human trafficking is very rampant. And fake Indian currency notes are often pumped into India via the Nepali route. They are printed in Pakistan, brought to Nepal, and then pushed into India. So all such criminal activities are present, along with several illegal gun factories. Illegal gun factories are present that produce these local country guns. Many criminals, terrorists, they procure these basic weapons and carry out major attacks against India. Naxals, for example, as I was mentioning, Naxals, they often procure these country guns from the local gun factories present near the border area. So organized, you have direct support existing for terror groups also across the border, where Pakistan especially had played a role in using Nepal as a base for its covert war against India. Right? We studied this while discussing Indian Mujahideen. How Indian Mujahideen terrorists were sneaked from India. They were sneaked out of India into Nepal through this open border and then secretly sent to West Asian countries and then taken to Pakistan for further training and radicalization. The idea was to avoid detection by Indian agencies. And after radicalizing them and further giving them training, they would be pushed back into India through the same Nepal route. Right? Indian Mujahideen and even Lashkar-e-Toiba, they have effectively used the Nepali route to move between India and Pakistan. Is that clear? So Pakistan has conveniently used the Nepali route for pushing its covert war, its proxy war against India, raising the threat of terrorism against India. So infiltration of terrorists has been a real threat and challenge, along with persistent border dispute at Kalapani and Susta. Even though Kalapani-Susta disputes were minor disputes, it was recently escalated between 2019 and 2021. We saw an escalation of the boundary dispute under few leaders like KP Oli. Then Nepal's Prime Minister KP Oli deliberately escalated the boundary issue at Kalapani. Right? So even though it's a minor boundary issue, we have seen tensions coming up in the recent past, which creates more challenges with regard to border management. So the border guarding force here is the SSB, the Sashastra Seema Bal. SSB has a lot of restrictions because of the open border we have. It can't carry heavy weapons. It can't carry heavy weapons. It can't open fire because it's an open border where people are freely moving around, right? To facilitate the free movement, the border controls have been relaxed. Hard border controls have been relaxed. Along with easy immigration norms, even the security measures have to be relaxed. That is how you provide for free movement. So this does become a challenge for SSB, but it is doing a very good job of securing this boundary today. Many of you, I'm sure, will be asking, sir, why are we having this open border then? Why don't we shut this border and close this border entirely? See, please understand, just because you have security issues, you can't affect the very foundation of India-Nepal relations. Indian governments are not foolish to keep the border open, right? There is a lot of thought behind it. It's a rational decision that subsequent governments have made, because the very foundation of India-Nepal relations is the open border system. You end the open border system just because of security problems, you end up destroying the relationship, and that will pave the way for China and Pakistan to further misuse Nepal to target India. China already has significant influence in Nepal. Pakistan has constantly used Nepal to target India, right? So ending the open border system will destroy India-Nepal relations. It will affect our economic ties. It will affect our people-to-people cultural relations. Understood? Security issues can be tackled. Even though all these challenges are present, you can secure the boundary better. You can improve border surveillance, improve patrolling. Even though the restrictions are there, you can still use better technology, better patrolling and surveillance to secure the boundary. And that is exactly what SSB has been doing. Today, the threat has declined. The threat has definitely gone down. The threats were maximum in 1990s and early 2000. That's when this border was very dangerous for India. Today, it has improved because border surveillance, border security has improved. Nepal is working with India. Nepal's border guarding forces work closely with SSB, right? There is cross-border collaboration. We are employing better surveillance technologies as well, right? Especially satellite and drone surveillance plays a critical role in border management today. So today we have largely secured the boundary, even though some threats are still present. It is a much safer border compared to what it was in 1990s and early 2000. So this is about the India-Nepal border. Is that clear? Next, the border with Bhutan. India-Bhutan border. This is a partially open border. It's not fully open like Nepal border, but it's partially open. It does provide for easy movement. There is definitely easy movement of people and goods and vehicles between the two countries. We do facilitate a free flow of people, goods, and vehicles. You just have to get some basic documentation done. You don't need a visa, but you have to get basic documentation done. You need the travel certificates issued by Bhutan, but it's largely it's almost an open border. That's why I said it's a partially open border, right? It does facilitate easy flow and easy movement of people, goods, and vehicles. So the Indian states sharing this sensitive Himalayan boundary. Don't forget, this is a Himalayan territory, right? It's filled with Himalayan mountains and dense forests. So this boundary is shared with Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, West Bengal, and Sikkim. Got it? So the terrain is indeed challenging. But fortunately, Bhutan is a close friend, a trusted friend of India. It has never tolerated or allowed any kind of activities against India. All right, it's a relatively safe border for India. We haven't faced any major threat as such, except for one incident that happened in late 90s and early 2000. Apart from that one incident, this is a very safe and secure border for us. We have very good cooperation with Bhutan, through which we have secured this boundary. Again, it's SSB, which is the border guarding force. We have cooperated with the Bhutanese forces, and we have managed to protect and secure this boundary today. The only threat we faced, only one incident we faced, was in late 1990s. What happened was India was conducting a major counterinsurgency operation in northeast India called Operation Rhino. It was a very massive operation against multiple northeast insurgent groups across multiple states. All right, it was conducted by Indian Army and Assam Rifles. So as these insurgents came under pressure because of Operation Rhino, they couldn't run away easily into Bangladesh or Myanmar as we had sealed these areas. Many of these insurgents, they conveniently ran away into Bhutan and took shelter in Bhutan. For several months, some of these insurgent groups, ULFA, NDFB, Kamtapur Liberation Organization, and other insurgent outfits, they couldn't run away into Bangladesh or Myanmar as we had cornered them under this massive counterinsurgency operation called Operation Rhino. So they escaped into Bhutan across the border and hid in the forested mountainous areas of Bhutan. Once India detected their presence in Bhutan, we coordinated with Bhutan's forces and launched Operation All Clear. Operation All Clear was carried out from 2003 to 2004 to flush out all these insurgents who were hiding in Bhutan. So Bhutan was not supporting them or sheltering them. The moment it realized that the insurgents had taken up shelter, it coordinated with India. We shared intelligence with each other and launched a joint operation called Operation All Clear to flush out these insurgents permanently. That's the only security incident we have faced here. Other than that, there's no organized crime, no cross-border infiltration as such. But it does have a tri-junction point where India meets with China along the Bhutan-India border point. Right? This is where we have the Doklam dispute, a major land dispute between Bhutan and China, which drags India as well. India gets involved in it. Recently, in 2017, we had seen how the Doklam crisis escalated into a military standoff between India and China. So this is a tri-junction point that you need to remember. Sikkim and Bhutan and Tibet, right? They have a tri-junction point near Nathula Pass of India. So this Doklam region, Doklam Plateau, belongs to Bhutan, but it's claimed by China. This dispute gets escalated because of China's aggressive activities. And India gets directly involved as we are bound to defend Bhutan. India has an obligation to defend Bhutan. So recently, the Doklam crisis in 2017 escalated, causing a military standoff between India and China. So this is another sensitive location along the boundary. But other than that, it's a very safe border. You don't have any major organized crime or any cross-border infiltration of terrorists and insurgents. Got it? So this is about the border with Bhutan. Next, the border with Myanmar. This I think we have already studied. Under Northeast insurgency, I made sure that we cover all these points very clearly. So let me summarize it again. Let me just discuss this in a structured manner just for a few minutes. Then we can take up the border with China. The border with Myanmar is around 1,640 kilometers approximately. And it is shared between 4 northeastern states: Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Mizoram, and Manipur. There are 2 tri-junction points here, one with China towards the north and another tri-junction point in the south with Bangladesh, where our borders, the India-Myanmar border, touches the border with China and Bangladesh in the north and south, respectively. So if you look at the terrain here, the geography is again very, very challenging. It's a highly porous border due to the natural gaps that are present. Just like the Nepal and Bangladesh border, this is also a highly porous border because of dense forests, mountainous areas, remote regions with no connectivity. Right? This is what creates the challenge for us. So you need to understand that several ethnic tribal groups of Northeast India, they share cross-border connections across the border in Myanmar. Understood? They share a cross-border connection here. So some of the ethnic tribal groups in India which have carried out insurgency against India, they've easily found a support base across the border in Myanmar. Like Nagas, for example, right? There are Nagas present in Myanmar as well who support Naga insurgents. Kukis in Manipur, as we have studied, are connected to the Zo or Zomi community, and Mizos are connected with the Chins, further escalating the cross-border crisis. Right? The region is part of the Golden Triangle, which is a global hub for all kinds of illegal activities, be it drugs, weapons, human trafficking, wildlife trafficking. Everything is rampant in the Golden Triangle. So Northeast insurgents, they easily access this region from across the border. So there is very rampant organized crime taking place. Large-scale trafficking, smuggling takes place into India, which is directly aiding insurgency and financing terrorism in the region. Hostile countries like China have played a role in backing some of the Northeast insurgents against India. Right? So this is where the challenge lies for India. The security challenge is very, very severe here. And along with that, we have a need to encourage border trade. We actually have a free movement regime, a free border movement regime here to encourage the border relations, which applies for 16 kilometers on both sides of the border. For 16 kilometers along this border, all the villages present here, they enjoy the benefits of the free movement regime. It basically allows for visa-free movement. It allows for visa-free movement for the purposes of local border trade and to maintain cultural familial relations on the other side. So India and Myanmar have created this arrangement to improve local border trade, to help the border economy and the border villages, and also to help the families connect with each other, to maintain their cultural people-to-people relations. The free movement regime does create its own challenges as well, right? It applies only for villages present around 16 kilometers from the boundary. But potentially the regime can be misused by insurgents and criminals as well. So it does become a very difficult challenge for us to manage this sensitive boundary, right? There is a need to encourage border trade. We are planning ICPs, integrated checkposts, have been planned. But along with focusing on development and economic activities, we are facing a challenge here with regard to securing the boundary as well. Similarly, do you know we have a ICP with Pakistan? For promoting border trade, there is an integrated check post with Pakistan. Do you know where it is located? Or what is this ICP called? Very good. Kumari has given the right answer. The Wagah Atari check post. Right? In Punjab, you have the Wagah Atari checkpoint, which is a ICP, an integrated check post, where advanced facilities are given. All concerned government authorities are present here in one single terminal to facilitate easy movement, to facilitate easy and fast movement of goods, people, and vehicles. So your custom officials, taxation officials, immigration officials, security forces and intelligence agencies, right, and all concerned government departments and agencies, they are all present in one single facility with advanced infrastructure. They will have warehouses, weighing equipment, security scanning equipment. Everything is provided so that we can quickly conduct the security checks, finish the immigration process, and allow the people and goods to move quickly between the two sides. So one such ICP exists between India and Pakistan at the Wagah Atari checkpoint. With Bangladesh, 4 ICPs are already functioning. All right, 4 integrated checkposts are functioning and few more are planned, which are going to come up in the coming years. So this is also designed to promote border trade and cultural relations at the border level. At places like Petropol in West Bengal, then at Sutarkundi, right, Davki, at all these important places in Assam, Meghalaya, and even in Tripura, There are 4 integrated checkposts present along this boundary line. So similarly, we are planning ICPs with Myanmar as well. ICPs are coming up with Nepal and Bhutan as well. Understood? Because right now we are prioritizing border trade. It will provide for border development. If you boost border trade, that is the way in which you promote your border villages and provide better development for your border villages. Right? So that has been a focus for India, and we are setting up ICPs with Nepal and Bhutan as well, and also with Myanmar. Then we also organize something called as border haats. These are basically border fairs, trade fairs which are held. You would have noticed in villages, for example, you'll have these local fairs, right? Where all the local producers, they bring the local produce, sell that, they barter that as well. It gives a big boost to local economy. Similarly, at the border, these trade fairs are organized. These are temporary fairs, which happens maybe once a month, once a fortnight, like something like that. So it allows the local villagers, farmers to bring the local produce and sell that and even barter the local goods, which sustains the local economy and drives development in the border villages. All right. So these are the various developmental trade measures we have taken up to boost border trade. Now coming to the border with China, one of the most sensitive borders we have. So with this border, the biggest challenge is the terrain itself, the climatic conditions itself. The border is shared with these states and union territories of India, from Ladakh to Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh. Right? It's divided into different sectors. You have the western sector covering Ladakh and Himachal and Uttarakhand, right? Parts of it. You have a central sector that covers the remainder of the border with Uttarakhand and Himachal, and the eastern sector covering Sikkim and Arunachal. So most of this boundary is disputed as China does not recognize the boundary lines. You'll study more about this in international relations. There I'll give you a detailed explanation of the entire boundary dispute, right? China does not recognize the McMahon line towards Arunachal Pradesh in the eastern sector. It has captured Indian territory in Aksai Chin in Ladakh in the western sector. So here we have a temporary boundary, a de facto temporary border called LAC, the line of actual control. Just like we have LOC with Pakistan in Kashmir, we have LAC with China towards the western sector. So the major challenge that we face here is Chinese aggression. Chinese aggression, Chinese repeated incursions that threatens our territorial integrity and sovereignty. Right? We have seen the latest Ladakh clashes. We have seen how China can get aggressive at the border, carry out these deliberate incursions to target India, try and capture Indian territory as well. Otherwise, organized crime is not too prevalent here. Organized crime or infiltration of terrorist insurgents is not a threat. The threat here is China itself, the state itself, the Chinese army. The PLA is the biggest threat. China has taken several measures to further its claims and to strengthen its presence at the border. It has renamed the villages, published new maps claiming these areas, including villages in India are being claimed by China through these maps. It has created advanced border infrastructure with improved connectivity. This is where China has an advantage against India. From the Tibetan Plateau, it has extended highways, railway lines. Advanced connectivity has been provided with better development as well. And another practice that China is using is that it is trying to populate the villages. It is creating new villages which don't even exist. And it's bringing population from other parts of the country to populate them in order to substantiate its claims over the territory, over Indian territory. In the disputed areas where we have a different perception of the border, China is setting up these new villages which are getting created, right? And population is being brought from the other side, from other parts of China. It's populating these villages, providing development as well here, claiming these areas as its territories in its new maps, renaming the names as well using Mandarin names. And this is all a planned, organized attempt to occupy more territory, annex more territory from India, right? So this is where we face a very serious security challenge. That is why India has focused on stepping up its border infrastructure as well. ITBP, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, is the designated border guarding force, and it specializes in high altitude mountain warfare. Along with Indian Army, ITBP specializes in such high altitude mountain deployment. It has special skills and equipment and resources to deal with the Himalayan conditions, and it has played a big role in securing this boundary. We have improved our border infrastructure by building strategic roads. Even we are extending railway lines, building bridges and tunnels. Is that clear? Activating some old airfields as well near the disputed boundary. So all such infrastructural measures are taken up by India to improve our access and connectivity towards the border villages, towards the forward areas with China. The ITBP is mainly deploying more troops along with the right usage of technology, from satellites to drones to aircrafts. Everything is being deployed for surveillance and patrolling in close coordination with Indian Army and Indian Air Force. Right? It's not just ITBP. It needs the backing of the Indian Armed Forces and even intelligence agencies. So there is close coordination between them to secure the boundary and to constantly monitor China's aggressive activities towards the disputed border. All right. Now, India has a special program, a new program that we have launched. It's called the Vibrant Villages Program. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. Let me know in the comments if you know. Yes or no, have you heard of this program? The Vibrant Villages Program. It's part of your current affairs. I really hope most of you know. Very good. A lot of people know about it. Very few don't know. So those who don't know, it means you're not being in touch with current affairs, right? Throughout this year, this program has been in news. It's been recently launched. It was announced in last year's budget, announced in the 2022-23 budget. All right. And the program has been launched this year. It has been launched in a full-fledged manner, and the focus is providing better development in border villages along the Chinese border. Essentially along the northern border of India. The program officially does not mention the Chinese border. It mentions it as the northern border of India. So all the border villages present along the northern border, which is basically towards the Chinese border, they receive special funds. Around 4,800 crore rupees has been set aside for the program. It is a centrally sponsored scheme. It's a centrally sponsored scheme. All right. 4,800 crores has been set aside to provide better development, to improve development and governance in the border villages. Is that clear? So the focus is on improving connectivity, providing better services like water, electricity, mobile and internet connectivity, creating livelihood opportunities, ensuring the overall welfare of the region, right? So all such schemes, programs will be funded in more than 2,800 plus villages that have been chosen. along this entire boundary from Ladakh all the way till Arunachal Pradesh, including all the border villages in Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and Sikkim, right? They are the beneficiaries of the Vibrant Villages program. This program will not overlap with other pre-existing programs. It does not overlap with pre-existing programs such as Border Area Development Program. This I'll explain later once we complete this chapter in few minutes. So there I'll explain what is Border Area Development Program. It's an old program which we are implementing across several borders of India. So Vibrant Villages program will not overlap with pre-existing schemes like Border Area Development Program. Now, these are the basic facts. You can learn this on your own as well from any website. But why is such a program important? That is the question. What is the significance of this program? Why should we focus on border development as part of border management? Any idea? Can someone tell me in the comments? Can you briefly explain or analyze why such a program is needed? What's the purpose? Can you give a small explanation in one line? Improve security. No, that won't improve security. To prevent migration. Pratyaksh says to prevent migration. Very good. Okay. Transport arms and weapons. Claim the area. No. Avoid insurgency. Better relationship. To exalt the influence of China. Okay. Very good. Some of you have given the right answer. See, border villages, they are important for several reasons. I'll tell you why. One, it is important to keep your border villages populated. That too, if you have a disputed border. Can you understand why? If you have a disputed border, it's important to ensure that the border villages are populated enough. That's very, very important. Because tomorrow, if your population moves out, if migration is very high due to poor development, if your villages become empty, the other country might counter your claims, set up its own villages and populate the area. Setting up human habitations is one way of claiming territory. That's exactly what China is doing. Right? I told you, China is setting up these villages, creating new villages altogether, and bringing population from other parts of the country to populate them. So India has to step up its claims as well by populating the area with better development. The idea is to arrest migration. It's not that we are going to bring population from other parts of the country. We are not like China. We don't do that. If you provide better development, better facilities, you create better opportunities for growth and welfare, right? People in these border areas will remain where they are. They will not have a need to go to other cities to find jobs, to look after their basic well-being. They can stay where they are and keep the villages populated, which strengthens our claims over the disputed border. So if you create better roads and connectivity, you provide them with better electricity, internet and mobile connectivity as well. You create more livelihood and job opportunities to drive local economy. Automatically, people will be happy. They'll be, socially, economically well off. They'll stay where they are, keep the villages populated, which enhances our claims over the disputed areas. It will arrest migration, right? That is one important reason. The other important reason is that it's important to have the population to be loyal and patriotic towards the country and act as the eyes and ears of the government and the security forces. They will be critical in intelligence gathering at the border level, right? You need to ensure your border population is in favor of our country. This will happen only when there is development and progress. If you neglect your border areas, if you don't connect the border areas, if you don't give them development opportunities, if you don't care about their welfare, why will the people here care about the country? Chances are high they'll get indoctrinated by the enemy country or by criminals and insurgents. They might start working with insurgents and terrorists or criminals or hostile intelligence agencies to spy on India or to carry out infiltration into India. So having that local support in our favor is critical. Getting that local support is critical because our intelligence agencies, our security forces depend on the local intelligence provided by the local people. They act as the eyes and ears of the government, of our intelligence and security agencies at the border areas. So it's important to keep them in favor of India, to make them loyal and patriotic towards India, right? So this keeps them away from any undue foreign influence. It will keep them away from any undue hostile influence. So this is the prime reason why India implements this program, the Vibrant Villages program. It's a new initiative. It will be implemented until 2025-26. All right. So during this period, the plan is to provide better welfare, better development in these 2,800 plus villages with dedicated funds of up to 4,800 crore rupees. It's specifically focused on the northern border, which means the focus is entirely on the Chinese border. Got it? So these are the various measures India has taken to enhance border security along the land borders of India. Now we are coming to the last part of the discussion. We'll look at coastal maritime security, what challenges we face and what measures have we taken. We'll also examine few other programs like Border Area Development Program. And there's another initiative that I would like to discuss at the end and close this chapter before we take a break. So just stay with me for another few minutes. We'll close this chapter and then take a short break. So we understood that we have a very long coastline at the very beginning. We have a coastline of around 7,516 kilometers, right? 2 island territories and a very, very large exclusive economic zone which needs protection, right? It's not just about the coastline. It's not just about the islands. It's about protecting our resources in the EEZ of the country, right? We have several lakh square kilometers, several million square kilometers of exclusive economic zone stretching across Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and the Indian Ocean. There are plenty of resources present here, from hydrocarbons to fisheries and even precious minerals. These resources are exclusive to India according to UN clause provisions. According to UN Convention on Law of the Sea, all the resources present in our EEZ belongs to India. So it's important to patrol the EEZ, secure the EEZ, and carry out regular surveillance to ensure coastal and maritime security of the nation. And don't forget, we also have many offshore assets to protect. What do you mean by offshore assets? Any example? Can you give me any example for an offshore asset? Oil rigs. Abhijit says oil rigs. Very good. Anything else? Bridges, wind turbines. Very good. Offshore wind turbines. Yeah. Anything, any project which is located offshore, which is in the sea, right? Anything which is directly in the open sea, like oil rigs, right? In Arabian Sea, near coast of Mumbai, we have a oil rig. In Krishna Godavari Basin, we have oil rigs that have come up. There are offshore wind farms. Wind turbines are installed in the sea to generate electricity. So there are many such important offshore assets that need to be protected. Right along the coastline, there will be strategic facilities present, which also needs protection and security. Apart from the major cities we have, like Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, etc., there are major naval bases of India, major ports of India, which is the lifeline of the Indian economy, right? We have important power plants, including few nuclear facilities. So all these are strategic facilities of India present on the coastline. We even have a space port at Sriharikota, right on the coastline of India. right? So there are critical assets that needs protection along the coastline and also offshore in the sea. You need to protect your offshore assets like wind farms, oil rigs, or any other facilities you have set up. So this is where India faces a big challenge. The long coastline, the island territories create challenges. The geographical challenges come up, right? It's not easy to patrol and carry out surveillance in such a long maritime boundary line. So the biggest threats we face is primarily rampant organized crime. Smuggling and trafficking is very rampant here. Drugs and arms smuggling and trafficking, especially from the Golden Crescent region, from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and even from Iran. Drugs and weapons are smuggled through Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean, and a lot of it reaches India as well, right? And there is an involvement of Pakistani criminal cartels and Pakistani intelligence agency, the ISI, as well. Many of these smuggling incidents are connected with terror groups and terror financing. So this poses the biggest threat for us, along with piracy and terrorism. The presence of several terror groups across the Indian Ocean, from Somalia to Iran towards Pakistan, right? We saw during Mumbai attacks how the Lashkar-e-Toiba breached our maritime coastal defense and infiltrated into Mumbai, carrying out the deadly, brutal attacks against India. It was Mumbai attacks which truly exposed our weakness in maritime and coastal security. Is that clear? So today we have a much better security mechanism that has been put in place. There is a three-tiered maritime security layer or coastal defense layer which has been created. Lot of reforms happened after the Mumbai attacks. It exposed the key gaps in our maritime defense and security. So we have created a three-tiered or three-layered security architecture where the Indian Navy acts as the first layer of defense and protection. Indian Navy has the overall responsibility as well to safeguard our maritime and coastal areas. Then you have Indian Coast Guard playing a critical role in securing our coastline and maritime areas and our EEZ. It backs up the Indian Navy as well, acting as the second layer of defense. And finally, you have your coastal police stations at the state level. All the coastal states, right, they've set up coastal police stations with the required maritime capability, who form the third and final layer, the local layer, as far as maritime and coastal security is concerned. So this is the three-tiered architecture. First, responsibility lies with the Navy. Primary responsibility is with the Indian Navy to safeguard our maritime coastal areas. Then comes Coast Guard and the coastal police, right? So this is the architecture we have created, along with enhancing our preparedness and infrastructure. Today, the Navy and Coast Guard are provided with all advanced resources and even weapons to safeguard the coastal maritime boundaries of India. They have access to satellites, advanced drones, advanced surveillance aircraft, such as the P-8I Poseidon. The P-8I Poseidon, which we have procured from the US, is one of the most advanced maritime surveillance aircrafts that can scan lakhs of square kilometers of EEZ to look out for any security threats. We have many smaller aircraft and helicopters as well in our fleet, like Dornier, the various helicopters that the Navy and the Air Force have, right? They play a critical role in maritime surveillance and patrolling. And naval ships, right? The various advanced naval vessels that are deployed, the Coast Guard vessels, they all play a critical role in securing the maritime coastal areas of the country. So, apart from these designated forces, we also have a coastal surveillance radar project. It was started after the Mumbai attacks to boost our coastal defense. And all along the coastline of India, from Gujarat to West Bengal, and also in Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar, and even in friendly foreign countries like Maldives, Mauritius, and Seychelles. Across this territory in Indian Ocean, coastal radars have been installed by India to carry out real-time surveillance of the shipping traffic in the region. Today, India has the ability to monitor all the movement that takes place in the Indian Ocean, which helps us deal with security threats in a much more efficient manner. This is a major project of India, the Coastal Surveillance Radar Project, right? We have set up these radars not just in India, but even in countries like Maldives, Mauritius, and Seychelles. So all the radar data is integrated into a national headquarters near Delhi at Gurgaon, known as IFC IOR, which is operated by the Indian Navy. IFC stands for Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean region. It's one of the most important intelligence gathering initiatives that we have started, where all the coastal radars along the coastline from our island territories and from Maldives, Mauritius, and Seychelles, they feed all that data into this headquarters at Gurgaon called IFC IOR, Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean region. This project is so critical for security in the Indian Ocean that even foreign navies are interested, and they are deploying their liaison officers to coordinate with Indian Navy and to share intelligence. So friendly navies like US, France, Australia, Japan, UK, Russia, all these friendly countries, they have deployed their naval officers at IFC IOR to liaise with the Indian Navy and share intelligence and coordinate with the operations in the Indian Ocean. Right? So all these measures have been taken. A three-layered maritime security layer has been created. There is a entire radar network with advanced deployment of weapons and technology, from satellites to drones to surveillance aircraft and helicopters. Right? The last point I want you guys to remember is that we even conduct several mock drills. Mock drills are conducted in coastal areas, and the local coastal communities, the fishing villages, they are trained by the Navy and Coast Guard and the Coastal Police to act as the eyes and ears of the security forces. Because maritime areas are so huge, you can't keep an eye everywhere. It's impossible. You need local intelligence coming from the local people. So the fishing villages, coastal communities are trained. Regular drills and exercises are conducted. Better awareness is spread to them. They're also given incentives to report any suspicious activity to the authorities. All right, they engage with them regularly. Coast Guard, Navy, and coastal police officials, they meet the coastal communities and fishing villages regularly. They hold these exercises and encourage them to share information. If they spotted any suspicious boat, right? If they saw any suspicious people who landed with some suspicious material, right? This has to be reported immediately. And this is part of our coastal defense, which is being put up, right? So the regular exercises, drills are conducted to spread the awareness so that they act as the eyes and ears of the security forces. All right. So this is about our coastal maritime security. Now, coming to the last point, we have discussed ICPs. I mentioned what are ICPs, why they are important. Let's talk about BADP, Border Area Development Program. And after that, there's one more important new initiative, which I'm going to discuss. Border Area Development Program was launched in 1980s to provide better development in border villages along the Pakistani border. After repeated wars and conflicts with Pakistan, India realized it's important to keep the local people in our favor, to ensure that border villages and the people who inhabit the border villages, they should always be in favor of India. They should not only keep the villages populated, but they should be in favor of India, right? Passing on information to India, which means they have to work closely with the border guarding forces, intelligence and security agencies. So India realized that we need to take care of the welfare, the development, well-being of these border areas. And a dedicated program was launched called BADP, Border Area Development Program. It's implemented by the MHA, by Border Management Division 2. And after the success of this program along the Pakistani border, it was expanded. It was expanded to cover all the land borders of India. Is that clear? So it has been expanded to cover borders with China, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, and Bangladesh as well. So it's a very ambitious program that we are implementing. We scaled it up from 1990s. It underwent a major expansion, right? And since then, we are implementing this along all the land borders of India. So please note that Vibrant Villages program, which is specific to the Chinese border, will not overlap with the already ongoing initiatives under BADP. The government has clarified this. It appears that there is an overlap, but government has said there will be no overlap. They'll ensure that Vibrant Villages program will bring better development to the villages along Chinese border, and the BADP will continue as it is. Even BADP program will continue along all the land borders of India, providing better development in all the border villages. And Vibrant Villages program is another standalone initiative. They don't overlap with each other. Understood? So this is a very important clarification the government has given. Now let me take up the last topic. To tackle insurgency terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, a new initiative has been started. It's not an entirely new initiative. It was actually an old initiative which has been restarted. It's called the Village Defense Guards, or VDG. This is a renewed program. This existed in 1990s when J&K was witnessing peak militancy. Back then it was called Village Defense Committees. All right. Under this initiative, the local villagers, along with retired army and police officers, right, they would form a vigilante group. They would be given weapons, training, and even some basic financial incentives by the government to act as a security response against militants and terrorists, to counter any terror attack. If they detect any presence of these terrorists who are sneaking across the border, carrying out attacks in the border areas, these village defense committees would respond, right, which were basically local vigilante groups. They would be made up of few local villages. Able-bodied men and women would be recruited, right, and some retired officials as well, of army and police officers. They could volunteer, and these local committees would be formed where government forces would train them, give weapons as well to them, and give some incentives so that they could take on the terrorists and assist the army and the other security forces before they could arrive. Because see, in Kashmir, back then, in 1990s, connectivity was a big problem. Let's say terrorists crossed over from LOC and local villages, they saw their presence. Now, if they go back to report and inform the authorities, and by the time the army mobilizes and comes, the terrorists would have left the area, or they would have already carried out the attack. Or let's say terrorists sneak over and immediately engage in an attack. So they can't sit and wait for the army to arrive from a different location, right? Because mobility, connectivity was a challenge. Even today, it remains a challenge. So back then, the government of India, the Home Ministry, had started this program called Village Defense Committees, where local villagers would be armed, trained, and incentivized to take on the terrorists and hold the ground until the forces can arrive. They are not meant to hunt or chase the terrorists. They are just meant for defense. If the local villagers are attacked by the terrorists, they can defend themselves The whole idea is to help them defend themselves. They can't go in hunt of terrorists. They can't do that. Right? They're not regular formal security forces. They are given weapons and arms training so they can fight back and defend themselves if there is a terror attack carried out by the terrorists in border areas. This program saw a lot of success in 1990s. It played a role in tackling insurgency and terrorism, but also it was accused of leading to a lot of human rights violations. Because when you're giving weapons to local people, right, and empowering them with incentives and arms, many times they might misuse this authority, right? They might target their rivals, they might target someone who's innocent, right? So there are many accusations against village defense committees of large scale human right violations as well, like fake killings, torture, rapes. All these accusations have come up in the past. So because of the controversy, this initiative was suspended after militancy declined by late 90s and early 2000. So this old program is now being renewed. MHA has renewed this program and restarted it following some recent attacks against local villages. Recently, terrorists have targeted few communities, minorities in the region, and attacks on border villages have gone up. So to help the local villagers defend themselves, village defense guards have been set up on the previous model of village defense committees. Is that clear? The name has been changed from village defense committees to village defense guards, but the whole idea of the program is exactly the same. So they will be given weapons and training by Indian forces, border guarding forces like BSF and CRPF, which are deployed in Kashmir. They have already given training to the local armed units, which are headed by retired army officials or police officers, and they get special incentives as well for defending the villages against terror attacks. So the Home Ministry believes that this measure is needed to help the locals and the minorities to protect themselves from terror attacks. Is that clear? It's a controversial policy because remember, under Naxalism, I told you that practices like Salwa Judum is blatantly unconstitutional. Salwa Judum had led to large-scale violations where private militia was raised with the help of Chhattisgarh State Police. But here the situation is different. We are facing a cross-border threat. Of course, villagers have a right to defend themselves. But as long as it does not lead to human right violations, it's fine. It actually aids our security efforts. But the concern is, what if some of these local guards, if they misuse the powers and commit some violations? That is the concern, right? But Home Ministry has renewed and reactivated this program, and it is seen as a key weapon to target terrorism that comes from across the line of control. All right. So this was the last point that I wanted to discuss. So let's take a short break. In the meanwhile, look at the previous questions that have come. Let's come back in 15 minutes. Let's come back by 7:20. Priyanshu is asking how the border of Nepal is different from borders of Bhutan. What is the meaning of partially open border? See, between India and Nepal, we have a fully open border, as I was mentioning, meaning there are no border controls at all. You have visa-free access as well. Indians can go to Nepal without a visa. Nepalis can come to India without a visa. And there is full free movement for people, goods, and vehicles, right? All the hard border controls are relaxed completely. It's like how the Schengen countries in Europe have a fully open border. So that's what we have with Nepal. With Bhutan, it's partially open because there is easy access given. You don't need a visa to enter Bhutan, but you still need a travel document, a travel certificate, which is issued by Bhutan's authorities. And you need to pay a fee as well. You need to pay a travel fee, a user fee to enter Bhutan as a tourist. Other than that, we do have easy movement for people and goods, but there are some restrictions for border movement. So that's why it's a partially open border. Kamalpal is asking, what's the difference between BADP and Vibrant Villages program? Primary difference is where it applies. BADP applies for all the land borders of India, all the border villages, whereas Vibrant Villages program is specific to the northern border towards China. All right. And under Vibrant Villages program, there is greater focus on connectivity, more focus on livelihood creation and such developmental programs. Even BADP is the same, but the government is saying that there will not be any overlap between the two. But the major difference is where it applies. BADP covers all the border villages, but Vibrant Villages program is only for the Chinese border. Gagan is asking, China is playing through psychologically, but not much politically. Why don't we reply in similar ways rather than just condemning? We are not just condemning China's aggression and its acts against India. We are acting against it as well, right? We are countering the Chinese aggression with our own troop mobilization, through our military modernization. We are bringing a lot of diplomatic pressure, right? So there are many ways through which we are tackling China. And India has done a fairly decent job, if not a great job, at least a decent job. Because please understand, China is a superior power, right? Economically and also in terms of military strength. China is vastly superior than India. So given that reality, India has done fairly well to counter the Chinese aggression. Kumari is asking, what are the functions of CRPF and CAPFs? We'll discuss that. That is what we cover in the next chapter. We'll talk about all the CAPFs, their role. Vivek is asking, sir, how interruption is done with respect to anti-drone systems? It's not interruption, it's interception, right? You intercept the GPS navigational system, right? The satellite navigation is intercepted through electronic interference. Or you hack into the radio network, disrupt the radio control between the remote controller and the drone. So by disrupting the navigation and the communication, you can bring down the drone. All right. You can collect the drone later as well safely for further investigation. Or you use kinetic kill options. You destroy the drone through physical methods. There are special weapons available, right? There are special guns, long range guns available today that can specifically target drones. BSF has procured them. All right. And there are many such kinetic kill options as well, along with the passive options where you intercept the communication, disable the drone essentially, and bring it down safely. So these are the different methods we are using to counter the drones. Amrit is asking, sir, aren't these village defense guards unconstitutional, as they will definitely misuse and violate fundamental rights? See, the Supreme Court declared only Salwa Judum as unconstitutional in Naxal areas, right? It hasn't specifically ruled out any private militia or any such vigilante groups. The government of India feels it's a necessity because J&K is a conflict zone, right? And there is a direct external involvement from across the border. With Naxalism, the case was different. Naxalism is largely a internal threat where domestic actors are involved. So in the case of Salwa Judum, the Supreme Court took a stand that any such private militia sponsored by the state is unconstitutional as it leads to human right and fundamental rights violations. But in J&K, especially in the border areas where terrorists are coming across the border, attacking local villagers and minorities, definitely villagers have a right to defend themselves, right? So the government can always justify this. The government can say that our villagers need protection. You can't deploy army everywhere. Army can't respond within minutes everywhere. They'll take some time to reach. So before the army responds, you need local people to defend themselves and counter these attacks and repel these attacks. So that is valid as well. In fact, the villagers in Kashmir, they need protection. They need defense of their own in Jammu and Kashmir. And that's how the government will justify village defense guards. So it need not be unconstitutional unless the Supreme Court declares it unconstitutional. All right. So guys, these are the questions. Now, please take a look at the previous mains questions. Again, as I've told you before, internal security questions are very easy, very simple to answer. You just need good, solid understanding of the concepts along with current affairs. Look at this first question. How far are India's security challenges linked with border management, particularly in view of the long porous borders with most countries of South Asia and Myanmar? This is a very broad question covering all the land borders of India, how they are porous in nature, and how it creates security threats for India, and why border management is important. That is exactly what we discussed today, right? I explained the different threats we face from across the borders. So you can start out by explaining how internal security challenges in India are coming from across the border. Talk about organized crime, cross-border infiltration of terrorists, right? Mention all these points and explain why border management is significant, why border security, border development is important, and then talk about the various borders of India. A brief discussion pointing out that our borders with Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they're all porous from where we are facing many cross-border threats. And then you can explain what India is doing to counter these threats. Next, look at this question. India's proximity to two of the world's biggest illicit opium growing states has enhanced her internal security concerns. Explain the linkages between drug trafficking and other illicit activities such as gun running, money laundering, human trafficking, and what countermeasures should be taken to prevent the same. Basically, the question is talking about Golden Triangle and Golden Crescent, right? It's referring to Afghanistan and Myanmar from Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle. How India is sandwiched between these two illicit opium producing hubs, which enables organized crime and terrorism against India. So you can draw a rough map if you want, showing how India is sandwiched between Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle, and how Afghanistan and Myanmar are the hubs of drug production. Then explain how these criminal cartels are involved in arms trafficking as well, how they are connected with money laundering networks and terror and insurgent groups. So talk about these linkages, the connections between organized crime and terrorism, right? So discuss all the security threats and finally the measures needed to counter them. How can we tackle these threats by improving border security, border management? How can we improve intelligence gathering as well to counter these threats? So discuss all these measures and that completes your answer. Now look at this question from 2020. Analyze internal security threats and trans-border crime with the borders of Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, including the line of control, and also discuss the role played by various security forces in this regard. Such a simple question. You just break down your answer into three parts. First, talk about Myanmar, explain the border challenges, the complex geography, the security threats. Do the same for Bangladesh and Pakistan border, considering LOC as well, not just the international border. So once you explain all the threats, including organized crime, then discuss the role of the security forces, the role of Assam Rifles, the role of BSF, and our intelligence agencies. So talk about that, mention what challenges they face, what measures are they taking to counter the threats, and that will complete your answer. Again, look at this question. For effective border area management, discuss the steps required to be taken to deny local support to militants and also suggest ways to manage favorable perception amongst locals. This is about creating a positive perception amongst locals. So border development is the focus here, right? Developing border areas, boosting local border economy, and providing better welfare is the best way to win local support, to win the favor of locals. So mention examples of BADP program, the Vibrant Villages program, how India is trying to create positive perception in border areas. It also means you have to reduce any human right violations being conducted or being done by the forces as well. Because if there are any human right violations happening, even if there is few cases, that is enough to create a divide between locals and the security forces. So we need to ensure there are no human right violations happening in these areas. And at the same time, we need to develop these areas, provide for better opportunities and growth. So that is the theme of this discussion. Focus entirely on border development. So that is the kind of questions you expect here. Very simple, very straightforward. You just need the basic conceptual knowledge with some current affairs. So with this, let's get into the last chapter. Security forces of India, security agencies of India. We have to study their role and mandate. This is a very dry area, meaning it's a very static area. Not much analysis available here. right? It's all about the facts. So in that regard, it becomes a very dry topic, right? But I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. I'll try to include analysis wherever necessary. I'll try to bring in some current affairs as well wherever it is needed. So there are many security forces and security agencies in the country. So we will look at them briefly. We'll look at some armed forces as well. We'll look at some issues related to armed forces and defense reforms. And we'll look at the civilian agencies as well, including intelligence and law enforcement agencies. The best part is that we've already covered some of them. Like we've discussed about NIA, National Investigation Agency. We've discussed about Enforcement Directorate. We have a fair understanding of our border guarding forces like BSF, SSB, ITBP, etc. Right? We have spoken about CRPF as well. What is the role of CRPF in our internal security? So we just have to collect these points again and have a structured discussion regarding these forces and agencies. So we can divide our security forces and agencies into these different categories. First, you have your armed forces, the military forces of India, the Indian Army, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. All right, the land, sea, and air-based military forces. Coast Guard is usually a paramilitary force. It's not technically an armed force. Other countries, they treat Coast Guards as paramilitary organizations. But in India, we have set up Coast Guard as a defense force, as an armed force itself. It's set up through a Coast Guard Act passed by the Parliament, which has set up Coast Guard as another armed force of India, as a defense force of India. So these are the major armed forces we have: the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Coast Guard. And they all function under which ministry? The Armed Forces of India. They function under which ministry? Very good. Obviously under the Defense Ministry. These armed forces are under the Ministry of Defense. Got it? Now, what is the role of armed forces? The armed forces deal with your external threats. It's your armed forces which fight wars against enemy countries. Armed forces are raised to procure heavy weapons such as artillery guns, battle tanks, advanced ammunition, heavy ammunition, fighter jets, large aircrafts, helicopters, naval ships, submarines, aircraft carriers, missiles, whatnot. So they are equipped with tremendous firepower. They use heavy power, and their primary training teaches them to kill. Their training teaches them to kill because they are tackling a hostile enemy, an external enemy. Right? The training of the armed forces, the equipment they carry is entirely different from your police and paramilitary forces. Understood? This is the fundamental difference you should understand. If you look at your paramilitary, if you look at your police and civilian forces and agencies, right? They are all trained differently. They are equipped differently. Police and civilian law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies, right? They are mainly trained to be more sensitive, especially if you look at your state police. Let's say you just look at your state police forces, right? They are more sensitized and they are trained to use force only as a last option, as a last resort. You would have noticed this as well in real life, because whenever there is a law and order security situation in your city, in your towns, police forces, they don't go open fire immediately, right? They try to handle the situation through various other methods. They open fire only as a last resort. They use force only as a last option. All right? So police forces are more sensitized. Your police forces are law enforcement agencies responsible for enforcing the law. So as part of this role, they take up investigation and they also try to uphold law and order, public order. This is the primary role of your police forces. Got it? Police forces are law enforcement agencies, essentially, at the state level. Even if you take central police forces, right, they do the same. You take your border guarding forces to an extent, your central investigating agencies. Primarily, they are involved in investigation and some are involved in law and order, in maintaining public order. So this is where I come back to my point. We had discussed about some civilian agencies in previous chapters as well. I had mentioned that in civilian agencies, there are two types. You have your intelligence agencies, you have your law enforcement agencies. Intelligence agencies, they only collect intelligence. They collect secret information. They run covert operations like RAW and IB. They're all manned by civilian officers. They're drawn from IPS and other police forces. So they're all your civilian officers. Similarly, law enforcement like NIA, CBI, your state police, they're all dealing with law enforcement. They're enforcing some law, right? Again, they are manned by civilian officers. But your state police in particular, as they handle both investigation and law and order, they are more sensitized. They're more sensitive to people's concerns. All right? They are more bothered about, protection of human rights as well. They use force only as a last resort, as a last option. So this is how our primary law enforcement, intelligence, and civilian agencies are categorized. Now, paramilitary forces are somewhere in between. They bring a mix of armed forces and your police forces. They are somewhere in between the two. They bring the sensitivity of your police and limited usage of force. They use only necessary force as required. All right? But they are very well trained and well equipped, just like the armed forces of the country. That's why they are like a fusion of your armed forces and your police forces. They bring the sensitivity of the police, but they are better trained, better equipped than your police. They're almost trained and equipped on the lines of your armed forces. So these paramilitary forces, they play a variety of role. In India, we call them CAPFs, Central Armed Police Forces. Just like there are state police forces under the state governments, the central government under MHA also administers several central armed police forces, which are technically paramilitary organizations. They are a mix of your military forces and your police forces. So this includes border guarding forces like BSF, SSB, ITBP, Assam Rifles, etc. and other forces like CISF, CRPF, and even your National Security Guards, NSG. These are the CAPFs under the Home Ministry, directly under the Home Ministry. Whereas under Defense Ministry, we have these armed forces, which primarily fight wars for India, which look after the external security of India, and they are trained to kill. They're trained to target the enemy. They are very well equipped with heavy weapons. They're trained to use heavy force. And using force comes naturally. It becomes the first option for armed forces. That's why armed forces are usually used only against external threats, not against internal threats. Because when heavy weapons and force as an option is used, it will lead to a lot of human rights violations and collateral civilian damage. That's why, as much as possible, we don't use armed forces for internal conflicts. Like Naxalism, for example. To fight Naxals, we have never deployed Indian armed forces. Right? We are using only paramilitary and police forces, as they'll be slightly more sensitive. They'll use limited force that reduces human rights violations. But in certain conflict zones like Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, and Northeast India, we have used armed forces, as we have studied, because there is an external angle involved. There was cross-border support from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and China. And given the cross-border support coming in, the armed forces have been used, like Indian Army. Right? It's deployed in counterinsurgency, counter-terrorist operations in Kashmir and also in Northeast India. Then, these armed forces of India, they have few special forces, elite special force units, commando units essentially. I explained what are special forces while discussing the Cobra battalion of CRPF, right? How special forces are different from your regular forces, how they operate. So we have few special forces like para commandos, the para SF of the Indian Army. the para commandos of the Indian Army. It's the para commandos that were used in various operations, in the surgical strikes that we carried out in Pakistan, in Myanmar, and various other operations we have carried out. It's para SF, para commandos of the Indian Army which are used. Then you have the Marcos or Marine Commandos of the Indian Navy, which is an elite special force unit of the Indian Navy. All right. Then Indian Air Force has the Garud Commandos. And we have another elite special unit called SFF, the Special Frontier Force, that functions as the armed branch of RAW. All right, these are the special forces of India. Then we have various central intelligence agencies, all civilian intelligence agencies, which collect intelligence, run covert operations for India, like IB, RAW, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, Financial Intelligence Unit, which we studied under money laundering, right? These are the various civilian intelligence agencies. We also have few central investigating law enforcement agencies like NIA, CBI, ED, Narcotics Control Bureau, etc. Got it? So this is how we can categorize the different security forces and agencies of India. There are few armed forces, which are military forces. They have their own special force units as well, right? They all come under the Defense Ministry, almost all of them. But SFF is a special unit which is under RAW. There are these intelligence agencies, civilian intelligence agencies like IB, RAW, DRI, Financial Intelligence Unit. Central investigating law enforcement agencies like NIA, CBI, ED, Narcotics Control Bureau, and Central Armed Police Forces of the Home Ministry like BSF, SSB, Assam Rifles, NSG, and the others. So this is the entire collection of the security forces of India. Now that you have a basic idea about how we categorize them, let's look at them one by one. I'll start with Indian Armed Forces. But of course, you don't have to mug up any facts or details about Indian Armed Forces. This is not your grade B exam or SSC exam, where you have to study about the different military bases of India, the various ranks in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, the various commands we have. Those factual details are irrelevant for UPSC exam. All right. So what we will focus upon under armed forces would be the topic of defense reforms. Recently, we have carried out some major defense reforms in 2018 and 2020. Some very big changes have been introduced, and many more changes are going to happen in the coming years. So we will concentrate on defense reforms. We'll understand what reforms are being proposed, what reforms have already been initiated, and how it improves our external security environment, how it improves the capabilities of our Indian Armed Forces. So as part of this discussion, we will talk about a very, very important position that was recently set up called the CDS, the Chief of Defense Staff. It's a new role which was set up and created by the government of India. It was a major reform that was launched in 2019. And this office, this particular role, was first occupied by General Bipin Rawat, the former chief of the Indian Army. But unfortunately, General Bipin Rawat lost his life due to an air crash. His helicopter crashed near Ooty, where there is a major military base. And India's first CDS, first ever Chief of Defense Staff, lost his life. So after several months of having a vacuum, like this position was not filled for several months, now recently the government has again appointed a CDS, the second Chief of Defense Staff of India. Do you know who's the present CDS? Very good. General Anil Chauhan. The current CDS is Anil Chauhan, again from the Indian Army. Right? General Anil Chauhan is the Chief of Defense Staff for India right now. So what is this role? Why is it so important? Why am I taking up this topic at the first? So let me explain this. I'll open a new slide altogether. I've given all the necessary points in the slides. You can go through that later. But I'll open a new slide and I'll explain all the details. The same details, I'll explain that. We'll have an analytical discussion because this is a very, very important topic. I feel a mains question can definitely come from here. Is that clear? So let's understand what is this role, what functions are assigned to it, right? What's the history, the background behind it? So let's study all of this. The CDS, the Chief of Defense Staff. The CDS would be the highest ranking military officer in the country. That is one important point you need to remember. Just like Cabinet Secretary is the highest ranking civilian bureaucrat, similarly, the CDS on the military side would be the highest ranking military officer in the country. Is that clear? The CDS will perform a dual role. This office has been created in such a way to perform dual functions. There is a military role he performs and a civilian role, a bureaucratic role he performs. On the military side, as part of the military role which has been assigned to the CDS, he will act as the Chief of Staff Committee. He will head the Chief of Staff Committee. He will be the chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee, which brings the three service chiefs together. The service chiefs, the Chief of the Army, Navy, the Admiral of the Navy, and the Air Marshal of the Indian Air Force, they come together to form the Chief of Staff Committee, the Chiefs of Staff Committee. It's a platform where the service chiefs can coordinate. They can work together, build synergies, plan together, right? And build this interoperability between the three different forces. Now, previously, the Chiefs of Staff Committee had a different structure altogether, and it was a problematic structure. In fact, for many years, we didn't even have the Chiefs of Staff Committee. This was set up after the Kargil War. But the arrangement which we had was ineffective. So that is why these changes have been made, where the CDS becomes the chairman of Chiefs of Staff Committee, and all the three service chiefs will come under him in the Chiefs of Staff Committee. So to understand more about this, you need to look at the history of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. What is this platform or body? What does it do, right? And what problems did we have with this setup, and why this change has been done? See, the armed forces, if they operate independently, if they plan separately on their own, if they procure weapons on their own, and if they don't coordinate with each other, it will end up as a defeat for the country. Our operations, military operations, will never be effective, and there will not be any synergy between them. In today's world, any war is not just about a land war or a naval war or an aerial war. Today, it's a integrated warfare environment that we are witnessing, right? Where all the branches of the armed forces get involved, and you see a tri-service operation where all three forces might be operating parallelly and together in the same battlefield. So this requires tremendous amount of planning, resource allocation, weapons procurement, and building those synergies and bonds between the three different forces. Or else all the three will operate in their own silos, in their own independent units, causing a very tunnel, narrowed vision, which will not fulfill the national interest of the country. So it's important to drive the three forces together, bring them together to ensure they operate together as one unit, right? So prior to the 1990s, we didn't have such an arrangement. The forces were largely independent on their own until 1970s, 1980s. The army was separate, navy was separate, air force was completely separate, right? They would look after their own procurement. They will have their own plans, strategies, trainings, recruitment. So this leads to a lot of wastage of money as well. A lot of money will be spent on similar equipment, causing overlap in defense procurement. That's a waste of taxpayers' money, right? It compromises planning and joint operations. And also, given the nature of threats for India, the army had always become more dominant compared to Navy and Air Force. This has always been a complaint, that army has always got more preference, more funds, better access to weapons and resources compared to Navy and the Indian Air Force. right? Of late, Navy also has started getting priority because of the maritime threats, but Indian Air Force often feels neglected. So to solve such issues between the forces, to drive them together, to operate together, you need a platform where the three service chiefs can come together. This platform is your Chiefs of Staff Committee. All right. Now, this was recommended by Kargil Review Committee and group of ministers as well. All these important committees had recommended such a platform. In fact, this is a standard practice in all the major military powers. You look at US, China, Russia, or all the big European powers as well, right? They all bring their armed forces together, especially the service chiefs together under such a committee where they will come under one unit to plan and strategize and organize together. But usually in other countries, this committee will be headed by a higher ranked officer. All right. Apart from the army chief, navy chief, and air force chief, who are all of a similar rank. By the way, they're all of a similar rank. Above them, there would be one higher ranked officer who would be the chairman, the chairperson of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. This is the usual practice in the other countries. You look at US, for example, the three service chiefs are there, Army, Navy, and Air Force chiefs. They are part of this Chief of Staff Committee, and it's headed by a higher ranked military officer. So there's a fourth official who's the chairperson of this committee. And below him, there are three service chiefs. But in India, this structure was not created. Because of the rivalries and jurisdictional conflict between the three forces, they opposed another higher ranked military officer. The armed forces were opposed to it. Even the Naresh Chandra task force, had recommended that there should be a permanent chairman. There should be a permanent chairman who will be a higher ranked officer who will head this committee and give leadership to the three service chiefs to bring them together. This has always been the recommendation of various committees in different forms. The names they suggested was different. All right, but essentially the concept was the same. To bring the service chiefs together, all these commissions had said that there should be a higher ranked officer who's a permanent chairperson who can bring that synergy between the three service chiefs, who can drive them to function together as one unit. But this recommendation was never implemented until 2019. We only had a temporary chairman. There was only a temporary chairman, a temporary chairperson to the Chiefs of Staff Committee. And who was the temporary chairperson? It would be one of the service chiefs themselves. They themselves would take up this position on a rotational basis. For a few months, Army chief himself would become the Chief of Staff Committee's chairperson. Later, Navy chief would take that role. And later, Air Force chief would take that role. And it was rotating between them. So only three service chiefs were part of the Chief of Staff Committee. There was no higher ranked officer who was a permanent chairperson. This was seen as a critical flaw in the structure of our armed forces at the very top level, at the highest level. Because globally accepted standard is that you bring the three service chiefs together and you put them under a higher ranked officer, right, who will drive that synergy between the forces and also acts as a single point advisor on all military matters to the government. In India, we never had that arrangement. Even though Chiefs of Staff Committee was created following recommendations of these committees, it did not have a permanent chairperson. The service chiefs themselves were occupying the chairperson's role as a temporary position, that too on a rotational basis. So when you have such an arrangement, you can never resolve the inter issues that exist between the three forces. The jurisdictional conflict, the overlap in procurement, the lack of synergy in planning and in strategies that could never be resolved when you don't have a higher ranked officer who's a permanent chairperson of this committee. So finally, this change has been introduced where the CDS now becomes this permanent chairperson. all right, as a higher ranked military officer who is ranked above the Chief of Army, Chief of Navy, and Chief of Air Force. He becomes the chairperson of Chiefs of Staff Committee and drives this synergy between the three forces. All right, the goal of CDS, the primary goal given to CDS, is to build jointness amongst the forces, ensure they can operate together in a tri-service environment, ensure that military procurement, planning, even recruitment, training is all streamlined without overlaps. What's the point of having different training academies? What's the point of procuring same weapons and fighting over it? For example, if you look at Army and Navy, they have their own air units. They have their own mini air forces, right? Navy has aircraft carriers, fighter jets, and helicopters of its own. Army has an Army aviation unit that provides helicopter support for transport and even for ground attack. But Indian Air Force operates the entire fleet of aircrafts, and it's responsible for air defense and aerial operations. So Indian Air Force always has this complaint that Army, Navy are building mini air forces, which undercuts the role of the Indian Air Force. What's the point of procuring the same platform for all the forces and wasting the taxpayers' money? Recently, we procured the Chinook helicopters from US, Apache helicopters from US. So over the Chinook and Apache helicopters, a conflict broke out between Indian Army and Indian Air Force. Both of them wanted these helicopters. Finally, the government ordered a bigger consignment and divided that between Army and Indian Air Force. Right? Similar issues have come up with Navy and Indian Air Force as well. So because of the overlap involved and common platforms that are used, if you don't build synergy, if you don't build the jointness in planning and operations, it leads to unnecessary wastage. The overlaps will lead to wastage of money. It will delay procurement as well, increasing tensions, conflicts between the forces, right? So that is the primary role of CDS, to address these issues, to streamline defense budget, ensure there are no overlaps, ensure that the defense spending is optimized and jurisdictional conflicts don't come up between the forces and they operate as one entity. Building jointness and synergy is the primary goal of the CDS. Is that clear? That is why a higher ranked officer is needed to enforce this on the service chiefs. Along with this, another goal, military goal of the CDS is theaterization, or creation of joint commands or unified commands. Is that clear? This is another primary role of the CDS, another military role. Apart from building jointness and synergy and reducing overlap and optimizing the budget and streamlining procurement, the other major role of CDS as the permanent chairman of Chiefs of Staff Committee is to drive theaterization of Indian military commands, to create more joint commands and someday ensure there are no separate forces like Army, Navy, and Air Force. Some of you might be shocked by what I just said. And trust me, this is true. In a few years, India will not have an army, we will not have a navy, we will not have an air force. Instead, we will have joint military commands for different theaters of conflict. We are going to completely restructure the very armed forces of India. This is the model followed by most of the big military powers. All right? There is no need to have separate units, which is causing wastage of funds, poor planning, lack of coordination. Instead, for different theaters, there will be unified commands and joint commands, which we call as theaterization. For different theaters of conflict, right, we will set up these joint commands that will operate as one single force. We will merge the Army, Navy, and Air Force. This merger is going to happen very soon, in a few years. Hopefully within a decade, this is going to happen. Let me tell you how this will work. right now you have a separate army, a separate navy, separate air force. Their roles will definitely overlap, correct? With regard to aerial operations, there is a clear overlap and jurisdictional conflict between all three forces. With regard to land operations, there is a conflict again, right? Even Navy will have its own land force units as well to conduct any large raids through the sea route. Even with regard to air defense, there is a conflict between Air Force, Navy, and Army. So to resolve this permanently and to build complete jointness into the units, the plan is to merge them into joint theater commands. The three will be merged very soon. It's going to happen under the CDS. That is the prime reason why this role was created. That is what all the committees were recommending as well for many years, right? The Kargil Review Committee, Naresh Chandra Task Force, they've all been insisting on creating theater commands and joint commands. So instead of having three separate armed forces, most likely it will be a northern command. There will be a maritime command, a separate air defense command, a logistics command, all right? So something like this will be implemented very, very soon. The three forces will be merged. The Northern Command will look after all the operations against Pakistan and China. The Maritime Command will look after all the naval operations of across the Indian Ocean region. It will merge the assets, the soldiers and the military weapons, the assets they have, everything will be merged into these command units. Understood? All air defense systems will be merged to provide a single unified command for air defense to protect the airspace of India. Separate logistics command is likely to come up to handle all the logistics for the armed forces, like transportation, rations, clothing, right? And all the other logistics. Everything will come under a single unified command. So this is the goal. This is just the rough idea I'm giving you. It need not be exactly the same because we still don't know how exactly India is going to proceed with this. Very soon, the plans will come out in the public domain. You will see that such unified commands would be formed by merging the Army, Navy, and Air Force. So these separate forces will not exist in a few years. So the soldiers and the weapon systems will merge, right, causing the creation of these unified commands that look after specific theaters of operation. Pakistan and China are specific theaters. Indian Ocean, the airspace, right? They are the specific theaters. So such theater-based commands, joint commands will be set up. Are you aware of any such unified tri-service command which exists right now? Do we have a command like that or no? First tell me that, yes or no. Does India have any tri-service command as of now? Okay, some are saying yes. Then which are they? Which are those? Which are the joint commands we have, the tri-service commands? Very good. The unified command at Andaman Nicobar. The Andaman Nicobar Islands has a unified tri-service military command where Navy, Army, Air Force have already fused, merged their soldiers, their military assets to form a single unit, a single command. Apart from Andaman Nicobar command, apart from the Andaman Nicobar command, we also have something known as the Strategic Forces Command. Have you heard of it? The SFC, the Strategic Forces Command. This is another unified tri-service command of India. Very good. Many of you know about SFC. The SFC is responsible for the entire nuclear arsenal of India. That includes the nuclear warheads and all the delivery systems that we have. See, we are having around close to 160 to 180 nuclear warheads All right. And there are many different delivery systems we have developed, like your ballistic missiles, the Prithvi and the entire Agni series of ballistic missiles. They are the land-based options to deliver nuclear weapons. Then we have a few fighter jets, which have been custom designed to launch nuclear weapons, like Sukhoi 30, the Rafale, which we have recently procured, Mirage, Jaguars. These are the fighter jets of India, which can deliver nuclear weapons. Then we have naval assets, especially nuclear-powered submarines like the Arihant class, INS Arihant class submarines. Right? They can carry nuclear weapons on board. So these are the primary delivery platforms we have. So all the nuclear delivery systems with the warheads are under the control of one single tri-service command, which is SFC, the Strategic Forces Command. If India ever has to go to nuclear war, if we have to ever launch nuclear weapons, it will be carried out by this command, which is a fusion of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. All right, the whole nuclear arsenal of India is under the operational command of SFC. Understood? So these are the two tri-service commands which we already have. So going forward, along with these existing commands, we are planning to create new commands and bring these forces together so that we operate on a theater-based format. This has a very big advantage. When you create such unified joint commands and theater commands, the biggest advantage is that it will bring synergy between the forces. It will bring operational efficiency. It will minimize overlaps and optimizes your defense budget. Defense spending can be optimized. Different forces need not spend money on the same kind of equipment and waste the taxpayers' money. They need not fight over control of these important military assets, leading to jurisdictional conflicts. These jurisdictional conflicts between Army, Navy, Air Force delays procurement as well, right? So all these issues can be resolved by forming joint commands and theater commands like this. Is that clear? So driving this initiative of theaterization, of forming such unified commands, is the primary role given to the CDS. As the highest ranked military officer in the country and as the permanent chairperson of the Chiefs of Staff Committee, he will not only bring synergy and jointness between the three armed forces, he will also drive theaterization and creation of such joint unified commands. This is the primary military role of the CDS. Got it? Along with that, the CDS will also be the single point military advisor to the government of India. He will be the single point military advisor. He can provide all the inputs to the defense minister and prime minister directly. Instead of three service chiefs separately providing inputs, he will collate all the inputs from three of them and provide single point military advice to the government, to the defense minister and the prime minister. Now, this does not mean that powers of the Army, Navy, and Air Force chiefs will be compromised. All right? Doesn't mean that CDS has full control over the service chiefs. That's not the case. Only with regard to synergy, jointness, theaterization, etc., the CDS will exercise superintendence over service chiefs. But in operational matters, in service matters, the three service chiefs will continue to have their autonomy and full authority over their respective services. With regard to the operations of the Indian Army, right? The day-to-day affairs of the Indian Army, the Army chief will have complete control and autonomy. Their CDS can't interfere. So that clear distinction is being drawn. Only for creating synergy, jointness, theaterization, CDS will have this superintendence over the three service chiefs as the permanent chairperson of Chiefs of Staff Committee. But for service and operational matters, the service chiefs will continue to enjoy their full authority and autonomy over their respective forces. That will not be compromised. Is that clear? So service chiefs will also have access to defense minister and prime minister if needed. But to provide single point military advice, the CDS will be the single point military advisor. Now, apart from this military role, the CDS performs a bureaucratic role. He is the secretary to a newly created department, the Department of Military Affairs. It's a newly established department within the Defense Ministry. Is that clear? When the CDS role was created, parallelly, this new department was set up in 2019. Within Defense Ministry, there are different departments, right? And one new department which has come up is the Department of Military Affairs, and the CDS will be the secretary. As a military bureaucrat, he'll function as a secretary of this division to look after planning, procurement, and to build closer relationship with the civilian bureaucracy. Because in Defense Ministry, you have civilian bureaucrats. You will have IAS officers. You will have officers from Indian Defense Account Services, right? There could be IPS or IFS officers deputed as well in Defense Ministry. They're all civilian bureaucrats. Usually, one challenge in the Defense Ministry is about bridging the gap between military officials and civilian bureaucrats. Since they have different objectives, they have different vision, there is always a conflict between civilian bureaucrats and military officials in the Defense Ministry. It leads to a clash within the Defense Ministry. It affects procurement process, delays procurement, because sometimes military requirements are not well understood by civilian bureaucrats. And military officials will not understand the constraints of a civilian administration, right? The budgetary constraints, the accountability that is needed. They don't understand those aspects. So this leads to a conflict between civilian bureaucracy and the military officials in the Defense Ministry. So to improve the relations between the civil military officers and to streamline planning procurement in the Defense Ministry, the CDS performs a bureaucratic role as the secretary to this new department, the Department of Military Affairs. Is that clear? That is the dual role of the Chief of Defense Staff. And in this capacity, he also will take over the Strategic Forces Command. He will gain full control over Strategic Forces Command to administer the nuclear arsenal of the country. Is that clear? Currently, the SFC is headed by a high-ranked military officer, either from Army, Navy, or Air Force. Even that is held on a rotational basis. So after the role of CDS was created, the SFC will directly come under the CDS. CDS will exercise direct operational control over SFC. As a single point military advisor to the government, CDS will play a direct role in the operationalization of India's nuclear doctrine. So these are the various key roles that the CDS will be performing. And that is why this is such a big defense reform, right? It builds greater synergy and jointness, brings the three service chiefs together. As a higher ranked military officer, he can drive jointness as the permanent chairperson of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. He can plan for theaterization and creation of joint commands in the coming days and reduce overlaps and unnecessary expenditure and streamline procurement, right? Even recruitment and training can be streamlined. That's another key area. Recruitment and training can also be streamlined further to reduce any unnecessary expenditure and bring more efficiency into our armed forces. So such joint theater commands might come up, and the CDS, as a single point military advisor, will head the Strategic Forces Command and look after the nuclear arsenal as well, and also performs a bureaucratic role in the Defense Ministry, inside the Defense Ministry, in this new department, the Department of Military Affairs as the secretary to drive closer ties between civil military officials and to streamline planning and procurement within the Defense Ministry. So this is essentially the role and functions of your CDS. It's a very, very important topic. There can be a mains question here asking you the role of CDS, the functions of CDS, and how it marks a major defense reform in India. Is that clear? So all these points are listed in the subsequent slides, which you can go through later. In the next 7 or 8 slides, I have listed down all the same points in a detailed format. You can take a look at it. But the explanation I've given you, the analysis, will help you write an answer to such a question which might come up in internal security. All right. Now, I think we have 10 more minutes. We can look at 2 topics and then we can close for today. In 2018, another major reform was introduced. A few new agencies were created, which was based on recommendations of Naresh Chandra Task Force and Kargil Review Committee. These important committees had few other recommendations as well to deal with space warfare, to deal with cyber warfare, to deal with special operations. These committees had recommended a Defense Space Command as a separate armed force, a separate armed unit for space warfare. They had recommended a similar cyber command for cyber warfare. They had also recommended a joint special operations command to bring all special forces together under a single unified command. These were important recommendations of Naresh Chandra Task Force, which had been suggested by Kargil Review Committee as well. All right. These recommendations have been partially implemented right now. In a way, partially the recommendations have been implemented. These dedicated units have been set up in 2018. We have a Defense Space Agency today. There is a Defense Cyber Agency, which we studied under cyber security. We also have a Special Operations, Armed Forces Special Operations Division, which has come up. But it's a partial implementation because the recommended command status has not been given. Command status will give more autonomy, more independence to these units. Just like Strategic Forces Command, Andaman Nicobar Command, if Space Cyber Command had been set up, Special Operations Command had been set up, they would have command status, meaning they would have more autonomy and more authority. But right now, what the government has set up in 2018 is a partial implementation of these recommendations. Without giving command status to them, separate agencies and divisions have been created at least. Is that clear? But still, it is a major defense reform. Today, a dedicated Defense Space Agency has come up to look after space warfare, which has become a reality in today's world. Right? We have many space assets to protect. Essentially, our satellites, which is the backbone of our economy and national security. We need to defend and protect our space assets, primarily our satellites. Right? Today, your economy will not function without satellites. Your armed forces can't function without the spy military satellites. They are the backbone of the country's economy and national security. So it's important to protect those assets. There is militarization, weaponization going on. There is militarization and weaponization of outer space, where countries are developing advanced weapons capabilities in space and deploying weapons in outer space. Right? Countries have the ability to bring down enemy satellites. They have developed ASATs or anti-satellite weapons. Countries have the ability to deploy ballistic missiles and even nuclear warheads if required in outer space. So to engage in space warfare, to compete with other space-faring nations like US, China, Russia, India also has set up a dedicated space agency It's a new tri-service armed agency. It will bring soldiers from Army, Navy, and Air Force together to form a joint agency which is headquartered in Bengaluru. Because all the key space institutions of India, including ISRO, are headquartered in Bengaluru. So Bengaluru has already become the base of the Defence Space Agency, which functions under the Integrated Defence Staff, the IDS. Its primary role is to develop a space warfare doctrine, for India, and also develop satellite intelligence assets and focus on space weapons, anti-satellite weapon systems, create weapons capabilities in outer space. This is the primary role of the Defence Space Agency. Is that clear? To create a warfare doctrine for outer space, to develop weapons capabilities to take down enemy satellites, to protect our own assets, and to engage in space warfare if required. India has already conducted its first anti-satellite weapons test under Mission Shakti in 2019. You might remember this. In 2019, India carried out Mission Shakti, where a remodeled ballistic missile was used to target a defunct satellite, which was mimicking an enemy satellite. We carried out a kinetic kill, right? This ballistic missile, which was repurposed as anti-satellite weapon, was deployed into orbit, and it targeted the defunct satellite of India and destroyed it by crashing into it and exploding, so that the satellite is completely decimated in orbit. So India is focusing on kinetic kill options, where you can physically destroy enemy satellites by using missiles. These are ballistic missiles which are repurposed as anti-satellite weapons. There are other ways of targeting satellites as well. You can carry out a cyber hack to intercept its communications and bring it down. You can use laser-based high-energy weapons. There are methods to capture or deorbit satellites as well. So there are some passive options like cyber attack, electronic interference, capturing it through various methods, or deorbiting it. These are all passive options. Kinetic option is where you destroy it physically, like high energy laser weapons. They can destroy the satellite, burn down the entire satellite, or missiles which strike into it, which target the satellite with an explosion that destroys the satellite entirely. That's a kinetic kill option. So all such weapons are being developed by India as well. Right now, Mission Shakti focuses on a missile which is refurbished to be an anti-satellite weapon. So the space agency has also conducted an exercise. IND-SpaceX is the first ever simulated space warfare exercise of India. All right. And under the space agency, the Defense Space Agency, you have a research agency to provide R&D support. All right. It will work closely with ISRO, DRDO, and other units, other research units. But it will be a standalone research agency for developing weapons capabilities for Defense Space Agency. So this is the dedicated armed force we have. It's a tri-service agency, right, for space warfare. Similar agency has been set up for cyber war. Please make a correction here. This is a typo. Defense Cyber Agency. We studied this under cybersecurity, right? I mentioned it's established in 2018. It's again a tri-service agency comprising of soldiers from all three armed forces, and they will specialize in cyber warfare. It was again a recommendation of Naresh Chandra Task Force. Even Kargil Review Committee had pointed towards this. So instead of giving command status, it has been set up as an agency. It's headquartered in Delhi, and it is developing a cyber warfare doctrine of India. And it is also developing offensive and defensive cyber weapons to protect our critical infrastructure and to protect our military networks from cyber war campaigns and cyber espionage campaigns of other countries. Even this functions under the IDS, under the Integrated Defense Staff. All right. So that is your Defense Cyber Agency. Then coming to the last agency or the division which was set up, the Armed Forces Special Operations Division, set up again in 2018. This brings all the special forces of India under a single agency, a tri-service agency. The Para SF, Marcos and Garud, they are being brought under a single tri-service agency to merge the special forces of these three armed forces. This is a standard practice seen in other countries as well, including the United States. In the US, you have special forces like the Navy SEALs of the US Navy. You have the Delta Force of the US Army and few other special force units. These are very well trained, very well equipped special force units. They can conduct these precision strike operations in enemy territory. They can conduct covert operations as well. They are self-contained units. They'll have the best equipment, the best training, and only the best of the soldiers make it to such commando units. So in US, they have merged these special force units into the JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command of the US, brings all special forces together. The Delta Force, the Navy SEALs of US Navy, and few other special forces of US Armed Forces. They're all merged into a single Joint Special Operations Command. This again reduces wastage, reduces any overlap, and provides for better planning and operational efficiency. Because these special forces will have similar capabilities and weapons and equipment. For example, they'll all specialize in high altitude jumps, right? They specialize in para jumps. They can jump from helicopters and aircrafts and deploy through parachutes. This is a common skill they have, right? So instead of having separate training, separate equipment for that, how about streamlining it with a single division, right? They will also have advanced diving capabilities, underwater capabilities, especially Marcos. They specialize in underwater operations. They can strike naval bases or ships and submarines, use underwater drones and underwater submersible vessels as well, right? So this is a resource that can be shared for Army and Air Force operations as well if required, right? Garud, they specialize in protecting air bases and the assets of Indian Air Force. So they can pool the resources together, bring all these commandos together under a single unit. So for that purpose, the Armed Forces Special Operations Division has been set up under the Integrated Defense Staff, under the IDS. This was also a recommendation of Naresh Chandra Task Force. Even Kargil Review Committee had made a reference to this. But they were recommending command status to all of them, but government has not given command status. Instead, space and cyber agencies, they have set up as agencies, whereas this is a division, meaning they have a lower status than a command. They all come under IDS, the Integrated Defense Staff, which is the tri-service headquarters. All three services operationally come under the IDS with regard to operations, joint operations, and joint planning. The three services, they come together at IDS, which is the tri-service headquarters. So under the IDS, you have your Defense Space Agency, the Defense Cyber Agency, and the Armed Forces Special Operations Division. This is a major reform that India has carried out recently. So any surgical strike or covert operation using these commandos can be conducted through the Special Operations Division. Instead of Army, Navy, and Air Force operating independently and separately, they can pool together and operate together, thus bringing more operational efficiency, improving the strike capability as well, and also reducing any unnecessary expenditure and wasteful expenditure. All right, so this is where I would like to stop my discussion for today. It's more than enough. We have almost completed 98% of the syllabus. So we'll meet again on Saturday, as I mentioned. We will have a 2-hour discussion from 12 to 2 p.m. We will finish the remaining topics. Few more topics are left under this last chapter. We'll wrap it up, and then we will have your doubt session from 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. So please make note of this. All right. So the coming Saturday, we will have a class from 12 to 2 p.m. to finish these remaining topics, just the last part of the syllabus, and take a small lunch break, and again meet at 2:30 to have the doubt session till 5:30 p.m. So send in all your doubts, all your questions to the email, and mention the subject name so that we can pick up these questions. Remember, we'll be taking up only these doubts which are sent over mail. We'll not be taking live questions because there will be a lot of questions that day. So you have to send it before. You still have enough time. Think, look at the syllabus we have covered, think of any topic and make a list of these questions and send it to the concerned mail ID. So let's stop the discussion here. I hope you guys have understood everything.